Chapter 1990. Late she noticed. The old man with rosacea smiled, the admiration in his eyes growing stronger. Clearly, he was very satisfied with Yu Tanjing's result, and Yu Yue's smile grew even brighter. After Yu Tanjing entered the stone stele, the disciples of the Dark Mirage sect also received a corresponding number of disaster crystals and entered the so-called trial ground. Junior sister, you should be able to obtain 9 disaster crystals, right? The man beside Yu Shan smiled and said confidently. Yu Shan's talent was extremely high, and she was younger than Ling Zhuo and Yu Tanjing, but her cultivation had surpassed them, and she even suppressed Ling Zhuo and Yu Tanjing in the Eastern Universe Plaza. The man naturally believed that Yu Shan would obtain the most disaster crystals. Yu Shan was not modest, and she said indifferently, 9? Senior brother is underestimating me too much. 10 is the least. Saying so, Yu Shan tapped her foot, and her eyes suddenly turned pitch black, and monstrous demonic chi surrounded her body. Boom! Violent demonic chi was released, and it formed a terrifying demonic shadow behind Yu Shan. When this demonic shadow appeared, the entire Eastern Universe Plaza was shocked. The old man with rosacea's eyes flashed as he stared at Yu Shan, who was releasing terrifying demonic chi, and he couldn't help but praise. Such a young age, demonic chi, your heavenly demon island is blessed. Demonic chi said rather politely, envoy by is too polite, Yu Shan is just lucky. Ling Yunji and Yu Yue's expressions were unnatural. The two of them were not mediocre, and they could tell at a glance that Yu Shan's aura had reached the peak of the 2nd step void sky, and was not far from the 3rd step void sky. This woman has a chance to compete for the Tower of Hanno. The old man with rosacea said meaningfully. Bang! Demonic chi surrounded Yu Shan's palm, and it slammed into the restriction, instantly shattering it. At the same time, 12 disaster crystals flew out from the stone stele. Yu Shan put away the 12 disaster crystals and immediately rushed into the stone stele. Heavens, it's actually 12 disaster crystals. This Yu Shan is so terrifying. This scene was naturally seen by many people in the plaza, and it immediately caused an uproar. Hearing the uproar around him, the corners of Demonic's mouth involuntarily curled up. On the other hand, Ling Yunji and Yu Yue's expressions turned ugly. After the disciples of the 3 major sects were tested, the other forces in the star field and the cultivators from the outside world who had come to the star field were tested. Although the speed of the test was very fast, there were many people in the square. If they wanted to finish all the tests, it would probably take a day. Fortunately, there was an expert like the rosacea old man presiding over it. Otherwise, the entire plaza would be in chaos. Due to the example of the disciples of the 3 major sects, many cultivators in the square thought that it would not be difficult to obtain the disaster crystal stone from the stone tablet, so most of the cultivators were not very worried. However, as one cultivator after another failed to break through the restrictions and obtain the corresponding disaster crystals, the bustling plaza fell silent. Generally, 90% of the cultivators who went up to take the test would not be able to obtain the qualifications to enter the stone tablet. This immediately dispelled the enthusiasm and luck of most of the cultivators. I'm afraid that the entrance to the trial grounds is part of the galactic tournament, right? Zhuan narrowed his eyes and looked at most of the eliminated cultivators with a thoughtful expression. Mo Yen, who was standing beside Mo Lan, had an unsightly expression. Many of the cultivators who went up before were stronger than her, but none of them were able to obtain the disaster crystal stone. This caused Mo Yan's heart to sink. Villalord, I'll go up and try. Mo Yen gritted her teeth, and under Mo Lan's nod, she jumped in front of the stone tablet. Divine power condensed in her right hand, and she blasted out a palm strike at the stone tablet's restriction. Bang! Mo Yan's face paled and she was sent flying. Mo Lan, who had a gloomy expression, caught her. At this moment, Mo Lan sighed in her heart. Mo Yen was the strongest genius of Mo Villa, but now she was not even qualified to enter the trial grounds, let alone Mo Jun and Mo Hong. Thinking of this, Mo Lan looked at Zhuan and Yun Chuyu beside her and felt a little relieved. Zhuan was very strong, and he was not more than 3,000 years old. He should be able to obtain the qualifications to enter the trial grounds. Zhuan did not go up to take the test. His attention had been on Lei Qi the entire time. Although Lei Qi did not pay special attention to Dongyu Square after scanning with her divine sense, however, Zhuowen knew that if Yun Chuyu went up alone with him, they might be targeted by Lei Qi. If they were recognized at that time, it would be really bad. Yun Chuyu also had this concern. As more and more people went up to take the test, her body went weak, and she looked at Lei Qi with some fear. "Chuyu, take this. When you go up later, you have to be fast. If you pass the test, immediately crush this escape talisman to enter the stone tablet. If you fail, crush the escape talisman to escape Dongyu Square." Zhuan stuffed a jade talisman into Yun Chuyu's hand and secretly transmitted his voice. Yun Chuyu's talent was not bad, and during this period of time, Zhuan had given Yun Chuyu fire spirit juice to cultivate, so Yun Chuyu's strength was much stronger than ordinary one disaster true gods. Moreover, after Zhuan's observation during this period of time, he found that the stone tablet did not distribute disaster crystals based purely on strength, but also on one's talent. Zhuan speculated that Yun Chuyu should be able to pass the test this time. Yun Chuyu looked at Zhuan worriedly and transmitted her voice. "Big brother Zhua, if I'm discovered, Lei Qi will notice you. I might be able to escape, but you, don't worry, I have my ways," Zhuan said with a smile. Yun Chuyu hesitated again and again, but in the end, she agreed. Half a day passed, and more than half of the cultivators in the square had been tested. The red-nosed old man, Ling Yunji, Mo Ji, and Yu Yewei were also uninterested. Very few of the cultivators behind them had obtained more than 5 disaster crystals, and even 3 was extremely rare. Even Lei Qi glanced at the stone tablet without much interest. She did not pay much attention to the tests of these ordinary cultivators. When a cultivator dejectedly retreated from the stone tablet, Yun Chuyu flew onto the stone tablet under Zhuowen's instructions. Yun Chuyu's appearance did not attract too much attention. After all, Yun Chuyu's aura was not strong, and she was only a true god of one calamity. Yun Chuyu's movements were extremely fast. The moment she arrived in front of the stone tablet, she struck out with her palm, and all the divine power in her body poured out in front of the stone tablet. Rumble! The restriction stiffened, then broke, and 3 disaster crystals fell from the stone tablet. Not bad. A true god of one calamity was able to obtain 3 disaster crystals. That's not bad. The red-nosed old man glanced at Yun Chuyu, revealing a trace of amazement. Although Yun Chuyu's face was covered by a veil, the veil was nothing to an expert like the red-nosed old man. Naturally, Yun Chuyu's beautiful face was in full view. Lei Qi also noticed Yun Chuyu. He originally appeared to be indifferent, but his gaze quickly became serious. In the end, he even stood up. He had already recognized Yun Chuyu. Yun Chuyu put away the 3 disaster crystals, then with a step, she entered the stone tablet's entrance. Yun Chuyu of the crepe myrtle sect? Lei Qi's expression was ugly. He originally wanted to stop Yun Chuyu, but unfortunately, Yun Chuyu's movements were too fast, and she had already disappeared into the entrance. Lei Qi's mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts, and he immediately realized that something was wrong. With his powerful divine sense, he had clearly already investigated the Dongyu Square before, but he did not find Yun Chuyu. How did Yun Chuyu appear here? That's not right. Did I miss something? Lei Qi suddenly thought of something, and his cold gaze immediately fell on the place where Mo Lan and the others were. Zhuowen's heart sank. Without even thinking, he unfurled his torch dragon wings and rushed toward the stone tablet in front of him. He knew very well that since Lei Qi's gaze had fallen here, he had most likely discovered something. Therefore, he had to immediately enter the stone tablet's entrance before Lei Qi could react. In front of Zhuowen, there was already a cultivator who intended to attack the stone tablet to test it. However, before the cultivator could even attack, he felt his body lighten. He was actually pushed away by a powerful force. Then, a young man with a pair of dragon wings on his back appeared in front of the stone tablet. Rumble! Without hesitation, Yun smashed down with his fist, and the restriction broke with a bang. At the same time, Yun discovered that a strange power had entered his body from the stone tablet, and it quickly scanned his entire body. After this power entered his body, Yuan felt as if all the secrets in his body had been seen through. Suddenly, 15 calamity crystals fell from the steel. At this moment, the entire square fell into silence. However, after the silence, there was an uproar that could topple mountains and overturn the seas. No one expected that someone would obtain more disaster crystals than Yushan of the Heavenly Demon Island. Moreover, the person who had obtained this result was a cultivator that no one recognized. What was even stranger was that this cultivator was only a one disaster true god. Rumble. When Zhuan took the 15 disaster crystals and stepped into the entrance of the stone tablet, a terrifying aura firmly locked onto him. At the same time, a huge thunder city appeared in the sky above Zhuan. This thunder city was composed of countless lightning arcs. Each lightning arc was as thick as an arm. They were densely packed together, forming a terrifying thunder city. Lei Qi stood on top of the thunder city. Her huge divine sense was like a mountain, firmly suppressing Zhuan. You're quite the schemer. You were actually able to evade the probing of my divine sense earlier. I've truly underestimated you. Lei Qi's voice was deafening. Zhuowen did not hesitate to bring out the glorious purple galaxy sword and the 48 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword. Even the Thunderfire sword was forced to fly out, bringing along the Supreme Fire sword and the Blood Immortal sword. This time, Yun did not hold back at all. He used all his trump cards. The 48 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword transformed into a massive vortex of killing intent. The glorious purple galaxy divine sword slashed out the 4 major sword moves of the Tao of Destruction sword art. The Thunderfire sword also unleashed a desperate move. The Extreme Fire sword is really with you. You dare to take this thing. You are simply courting death. Chapter 1991. Repair the Thunder City released by Lei Qi was too terrifying. The 4 sword moves of the glorious purple galaxy divine sword had been destroyed in an instant. However, the killing intent vortex formed by the 48 embryos of the primitive devil gold sword had caused the Thunder City to stagnate for a moment. It's the no-beginning devil gold? Lei Qi also noticed the 48 embryos of the no-beginning devil gold swords that caused the Thunder City to slow down slightly. However, he soon sneered and the Thunder City instantly broke the killing intent whirlpool. The 48 embryos of the no-beginning devil gold swords were shattered. Even the Blood Immortal sword and the Supreme Flaming sword that were controlled by the Lei Hua sword were blown away. Lei Qi was not in a hurry to catch the Supreme Flaming sword. Instead, he looked at Zhuowen indifferently. He was very clear about how terrifying this Thunder City was. This Zhuowen was definitely going to die here. Since he had killed this kid, everything on him would naturally belong to him. Hence, he was not in a hurry. The speed of Lei Qi's attack was too fast. It happened in the blink of an eye. When the people on the square noticed it, the Thunder City released by Lei Qi was already very close. It would only take a breath's time for it to completely smash Zhuowen's head. Although most of them did not know Zhuowen, they knew that Zhuowen was going to die. Lei Qi's cultivation was above the Void Sky 5th stage. However, the young man in front of him was only a one disaster true god. There was no way he could survive. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. Countless lightning arcs were like a rising tide as they engulfed his entire body. At this moment, Zhuowen only felt that his internal organs were tumbling. Countless lightning arcs wrapped around him, causing his entire body to feel numb. Xiaohei, come back! Zhuowen roared as he kept the Lei Hua sword and the no-beginning devil gold sword embryos. Lei Qi's eyes were filled with disdain. In his opinion, Zhuowen had decided to give up and wait for his death by keeping the Lei Hua sword and the no-beginning devil gold sword embryos. Die! Lei Qi sneered as the Thunder City slammed into Zhuowen's body. In an instant, terrifying lightning radiance spread throughout the entire square, causing many cultivators to squint their eyes. The old man with rosacea furrowed his brows. Lei Qi had acted on his own accord to deal with a junior, which made him a little displeased. However, Lei Qi's speed was too fast. Before he could even react, that junior had already been smashed by the Thunder City. The old man with rosacea, who had originally intended to lend a helping hand, withdrew his hand. He knew that no matter how heaven-defying true God Izai was, he would definitely die under such a terrifying attack. CI. A series of strange noises suddenly rang out. Under the Thunder City, black lightning suddenly spread out. There wasn't much of this black lightning, but the aura on it was extremely sharp, as if it could destroy everything. It was this trace of black lightning that was faintly supporting the Thunder City. Lei Qi also discovered that something was wrong. Just when he was preparing to strengthen the attack of the Thunder City, the white-robed Zhuoan who was supposed to be destroyed by the Thunder City was wrapped in a black shadow and stepped into the entrance of the stone tablet. Bang! The black lightning only lasted for a moment before it completely dissipated. Lei Qi gloomily stared at the figure that disappeared into the stone tablet's entrance, flustered and exasperated. He knew that Zhuoan wasn't killed by him, but at the same time, he was indescribably shocked. He was a dignified fifth-step void sky expert, but he was actually unable to kill Zhuoan, who was merely a true god Izai. From this, it could be seen how extraordinary Zhuoan was. That bitch In Bingyun's eyesight isn't bad. The person she chose isn't simple. Lei Qi put away the Thunder City, and after cursing in his heart, he rushed to the side and bowed to the old man with rosacea in front of him. Sir Envoy, just now, that youth stole this humble one's precious item, so this humble one couldn't help but act after recognizing him. Yu Yue also hurriedly said, Sir Envoy, please don't be angry. Lei Qi's personality is rather impulsive, so... The old man with rosacea waved his hand and coldly looked at Lei Qi, saying, What's the name of that youth? What's his origin? Lei Qi's heart skipped a beat. He knew that Zhuoan had probably attracted the attention of the old man with rosacea. He cursed in his heart, but could only answer honestly, His name is Zhuoan, and he's a rogue cultivator. I don't know his exact origin. The old man with rosacea nodded, and then waved his right hand. Lei Qi, who was bowing, stiffened, and his right hand was unknowingly chopped off. Lei Qi covered the wound on his right hand, and his heart was somewhat terrified. He immediately knelt down on one knee. This is a warning to you. Next time, I don't want anyone to casually kill someone in front of me like this, the old man with rosacea said indifferently. Lei Qi lowered his head, not daring to look at the old man with rosacea, but his heart was abnormally angry. This time, it could be said that he suffered a double loss. Not only did he fail to successfully kill Zhuoan, but he also offended the old man with rosacea. At this moment, the square was in an uproar. Everyone was discussing Zhuoan. Not only did he obtain 15 disaster crystals, but he also escaped from the sure-kill attack of Lei Qi, a fifth-stage void sky expert. Such an action was absolutely world-shaking. Mo Lan and Mo Yen were stunned in place, and neither of them spoke for a long time. Villa Lord, that too, is actually so strong. Mo Yen said somewhat shamefully. Previously, Mo Yen was still a little unhappy that Zhuoan had taken away Mo Hong and Mo Jun's spots, but now she no longer had such thoughts. Mo Lan's gaze was complicated. He finally understood why Zhuoan was so confident that he could help their MOU villa enter the top 100. It turned out that this child's strength was so terrifying. I hope Lord Lei Qi doesn't investigate our MOU villa. Mo Lan didn't have any joy. He knew that since Yuan had a grudge with Lei Qi, and if Lei Qi found out that Zhuowan's spot was given by their MOU villa, then their MOU villa would be finished. When everyone in the square finished testing, the old man with rosacea put away the stone tablet and said indifferently to Ling Yunji, Mo Ji, and Yu Yue, the three of you, this old man's main purpose this time is to guide the participants to the trial grounds. The exit of the trial grounds is not in Dongyu, but near Zhongyu's Tower of Hanoi. If the three of you want to see the results, you can come to Zhongyu. This old man will take his leave first. After saying that, the old man with rosacea swaggered off. This was a sunken canyon, and the surroundings were filled with gray fog. Puchi, the white-clothed Zhuoan drilled out of a crack and fell to the ground, coughing up blood. This sovereign's injuries are very serious. The black-clothed Zhuoan squatted down and checked on the white-clothed Zhuoan. His expression was extremely solemn. Lei Qi was too strong. Just the Thunder City alone was enough to blast the sovereign's body into smithereens. If he didn't release the black-clothed Zhuowen in time and release the heavenly Thunder Eye, the sovereign would have died. But even so, countless cracks appeared on the body of the main body. Between the cracks, streams of blood flowed out. The main body's white clothes were dyed the color of blood. Not only that, the black-clothed Zhuowen also suffered heavy injuries. Blood flowed out from his forehead. In order to stop Lei Qi's Thunder City, the black-clothed Zhuowen released all of his heavenly Thunder Eye. The heavenly thunder that he had previously stored was released without any regard for his life. As a result, Zhuowen overused his heavenly Thunder Eye and suffered a certain injury. Lei Qi, if I don't take revenge, I, Zhuowen, am not a human. Thinking of the previous scene, Zhuowen's eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. Zhuowen knew very well that if he didn't have the heavenly thunder at that time, his sovereign would have died without a doubt. Even Devourer's doppelganger might have been seriously injured. He would remember this grudge. However, Zhuowen knew that his current strength was too weak. The gap between him and Lei Qi was too big. He had to become stronger. He knew very well that Lei Qi would never let this matter rest. Moreover, he had promised Yun Chuyu that if he had the strength within 100 years, he would definitely rescue Yin Bingyun. All of this required him to have great strength. The interstellar tournament this time was the way for Zhuowen to increase his strength. Not to mention the Tower of Hanner that could allow a cultivator to be reborn. Just the calamity crystal that the rosy-nosed old man had mentioned could allow Zhuowen to rapidly advance. The black-robed Zhuowen took out the level 7 divine medicine, wild sea cucumber flower, from his spirit ring. He kneaded it into a liquid and fed it to the unconscious white-robed Zhuowen, temporarily stabilizing his injuries. Zhuowen had obtained the Zhang sea cucumber flower from the ruined herb garden of the almighty void heaven almighty, even though all the level 7 divine herbs had withered. However, ever since Zhuowen obtained the scarlet cloud immortal soil, he began to plant the withered level 6 and level 7 divine medicines into the scarlet cloud immortal soil. Relying on the scarlet cloud immortal soil, more than half of the withered divine medicines on Zhuowen's body had recovered. This wild sea cucumber flower was one of them. Moreover, this wild sea cucumber flower had miraculous healing effects. In addition, it was a level 7 divine medicine, so its medicinal effects were extremely strong. Just this wild sea cucumber flower alone was definitely priceless in the outside world. After all, once a divine medicine reached level 5 or above, it would be very difficult to buy it with God's stones in the outside world. One would have to use similarly precious treasures to exchange for it. After stabilizing the white-robed Zhuowen, the black-robed Zhuowen put the white-robed Zhuowen into his inner world. At the same time, he put on the white-robed Zhuowen's spirit ring and began to extend his powerful divine sense. What made Zhuowen frown was that his divine sense could only extend to a range of 100 meters in this place. Moreover, he did not see anyone else in this canyon. He did not even see Yun Chuyu, who had just entered not long ago. It seems that the location of this trial ground is random. Let's find a secluded place to recuperate first. Once my injuries have healed, I'll go out and find Chuyu. The black-robed Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. Then he rushed to the left. In his divine sense, he discovered that there was a natural cave there. When he arrived at the cave, Yuan used his divine sense to scan the inside. After he discovered that there was no danger inside, he entered. At the same time, Zhuowen set up a shielding formation outside the cave. He also set up level 3 trap formation and killing formation inside the cave. With these two formations, it would be very difficult for an ordinary real god of 3 disasters to break through the cave. After setting up the formations, Zhuowen took out the illusory heavenly bridge and placed his original body on the illusory heavenly bridge. He let the enormous energy of the illusory heavenly bridge heal his original body's injuries continuously. Chapter 1992. In a canyon. 10 days later, the black-clad Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. The black-clad Zhuowen's real body was Devour, so his recovery ability was amazing. Moreover, after the attack with Lei Qi, the black-clad Zhuowen's injuries were much lighter than the white-clad Zhuowen's. Therefore, he had almost recovered in 10 days. On the other hand, although the white-clad Zhuowen had woken up, his injuries were still more serious. If the white-robed Zhuowen wanted to recover, it would probably take some time. Zhuowen didn't know anything about this trial ground, so he didn't plan to go out rashly. Zhuowen flipped his right hand, and 15 black crystals appeared in his palm. These were the calamity crystals he had obtained from the stone steel. Zhuowen was a little surprised to obtain 15 calamity crystals. Before the test, he had estimated that he could obtain more than 5 calamity crystals, but the result of the test was beyond his expectations. Zhuowen speculated that the reason he had obtained so many calamity crystals was because of Devour. Suddenly, the calamity crystals in his hand floated up on their own, and a dim light entered Zhuowen's forehead. Zhuowen found that this dim light contained a message. The rules of the trial ground are very simple, which is to snatch as many calamity crystals as possible. You can use calamity crystals, but you can't have 0 calamity crystals. Otherwise, you will be sent out of the trial ground. The time limit for staying here is 50 years. After 50 years, you will be sent out of the exit. Also, the trial ground is a secret world with 18 layers. The higher you go, the more calamity crystals there are. If you want more power, you have to keep climbing. However, you must remember that in this place, the higher your cultivation base, the stronger you will be. Those with high cultivation bases shouldn't be arrogant. Zhuowen knitted his brows, carefully studying the message in the calamity crystals. It was thought-provoking, especially the last sentence. Zhuowen suddenly remembered that 10 days ago, when he had first entered this place, his soul consciousness could only extend to a range of 100 meters. Generally speaking, a true god's divine sense was very powerful. Just by extending it, it could cover the surface of an ordinary planet. On the other hand, Zhuowen's divine soul had been tempered by the universe-quenching stone, and he had cultivated the star's meditation diagram. His divine soul was even more terrifying than a true god's. However, it could only extend 100 meters in this place, which showed how unusual this person was. Divine sense was extremely important to a cultivator. It served as a cultivator's eyes, allowing them to remain vigilant at all times and foresee danger ahead of time. If one's spiritual sense did not work, then the combat power of a cultivator would be greatly reduced. The stronger one's divine sense is, the more advantage one has. That should be the meaning of the last sentence. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He put away the illusory heavenly bridge and stood up. Although the white-robed Zhuowen was injured, the black-robed Zhuowen had completely recovered. He planned to go out and look for Yunqiu and see if he could find any clues about this place. However, before leaving the cave, Yuan planned to test the effects of the calamity crystal and see if it was as magical as the old man said. Let's use 5 calamity crystals first to see the effects. After saying that, Yuan crushed 5 calamity crystals. A surge of energy poured into Zhuowen's body, causing Zhuowen to let out a comfortable sigh. The energy of the calamity crystals was completely different from the energy of the divine stones. This energy was more compatible with a true god, and its quality was many times higher than the energy of the divine stones. With just 5 calamity crystals, Zhuowen felt that the energy in his body had become much more abundant. After absorbing the 5 calamity crystals, Zhuowen suddenly felt his entire body heat up. This was not the first time Zhuowen had experienced this feeling. The last time he had rushed to the heaven-receiving stone, before the lightning calamity had suddenly descended from the starry sky, he had felt this way. A second lightning calamity? Zhuowen's expression changed. He had only used 5 calamity crystals and had actually caused a second lightning calamity to descend. Wasn't this too fast? In fact, what Zhuowen didn't know was that when an ordinary cultivator used calamity crystals to hasten the descent of a lightning calamity, it would take at least 10 years. Moreover, the amount of calamity crystals required was not small. However, Zhuowen was different. He had Devour's doppelganger, and this doppelganger was too abnormal. It was rejected by the starry sky's laws, so the interval between lightning calamities was much shorter than that of ordinary cultivators. Otherwise, when the black-robed Zhuowen had just advanced to the true god realm, it would have been impossible for him to experience a lightning calamity. However, it had appeared in the starry sky. This was the starry sky's reaction to Devour's rejection. Regarding the lightning calamity, Yuan didn't show any fear. On the contrary, he was extremely excited. His heavenly thunder eye happened to be the nemesis of the lightning calamity. Moreover, it could absorb the energy of the lightning calamity and transform it into terrifying heavenly lightning. The energy of the first lightning calamity had only transformed into a trace of heavenly lightning. However, by relying on this trace of heavenly lightning, Yuan was able to resist Lei Qi's Thunder City and luckily escape the calamity. The heavenly lightning was also consumed in the end. The heavenly lightning was currently Zhuowen's strongest trump card. Naturally, he urgently needed more heavenly lightning. Relying on Devour's body to produce heavenly lightning would take too long. He had to quickly accumulate heavenly lightning. Now that the second lightning calamity had descended, Yuan was naturally wild with joy. Rumble. Above the dusky canyon, a gate surrounded by black lightning appeared. A destructive aura spread out from the canyon. The cultivators wandering around the canyon raised their heads and looked at the lightning gate floating in the air in astonishment. Lightning calamity? Someone is actually undergoing the lightning calamity now? How long has it been since he entered the trial ground? It's possible that this person's lightning calamity is approaching and he just happened to enter the trial ground. Therefore, he decided to undergo the lightning calamity here. This person is really stupid. Isn't undergoing the lightning calamity in the trial ground the same as telling others where he is? Like green smoke, silhouettes flew in the direction of the lightning gate. Obviously, many cultivators had their eyes on the cultivator undergoing the lightning calamity. In the trial ground, there were no rules or restrictions. The only rule here was to snatch calamity crystals to improve one's cultivation and not be eliminated. The cultivators who entered the trial ground were all cautious. Especially when they found that divine senses were useless here, they were even more careful and did not dare to expose their positions. Zhuan did not know that he was being watched by the people near the canyon. At this moment, he walked out of the cave and stared at the lightning gate in the sky with a smile on his face. Suddenly, several lightning arcs swept out from the lightning gate. Each lightning arc was as thick as a finger. Zhuan had compared the power of the second lightning calamity. The power of the second lightning calamity was indeed much stronger than the first. However, Zhuan was more looking forward to seeing how much heavenly lightning he could produce this time. Of course, Zhuan did not neglect this time. He took out 48 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold and surrounded himself as a precaution. As the lightning arc descended, the heavenly thunder eye opened. The suction force gushed out again and sucked in all the terrifying lightning arcs. The lightning arcs fell wave after wave, and their power was getting stronger and stronger. However, the heavenly thunder eye was not afraid and swallowed the lightning arcs again and again. Of course, a part of the lightning arcs would occasionally escape, but they were all blocked by the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryos. When the last wave of lightning calamity descended, 9 lightning arcs escaped. Each lightning arc was as thick as a thumb and was much more powerful than the previous ones. Zhuan did not dare to be negligent. The no-beginning demonic gold sword embryos blasted out together and blocked 8 of them. Obviously, the heavenly thunder eye absorbed one of them. After the heavenly thunder eye absorbed all the lightning arcs, it released another one. One after another, it smoothly absorbed all the 9 lightning arcs. At this moment, Zhuan looked inside the heavenly thunder eye and found that there were 2 heavenly lightning arcs in the heavenly thunder eye. Although they were only as thin and inconspicuous as threads, Zhuan knew very well how powerful a thread of heavenly lightning was. After passing through the lightning calamity, Zhuan narrowed his eyes. His divine sense extended to 100 meters away and found that more than 10 cultivators were approaching. Zhuan even found that one of the cultivators behind Zhuan had a ferocious look in his eyes. He actually took out a divine weapon and rushed toward Zhuan. This cultivator did not control the divine weapon with his divine sense. Instead, he held the divine weapon in his right hand and stabbed it at Zhuowen's back at lightning speed. Obviously, he wanted to kill Zhuowen with one blow. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. With a wave of his right hand, the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryo flew out of his hand and instantly blasted the cultivator's chest. Pucci. This cultivator obviously did not expect Zhuan to be able to use his divine sense to control the divine weapon. After being hit by the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryo, his chest caved in and he fell to the ground, dying. You can still use your divine sense? Didn't you say that divine sense below the void sky realm can't be used? This cultivator died with remaining grievances. His slightly bulging eyes stared at Zhuan. Obviously, he found it hard to believe that Zhuan could use his divine sense. Zhuan's eyes moved. From this cultivator's words, he gained a lot of information. It seemed that divine sense below the void sky realm was too weak. This place was completely forbidden. However, the divine sense of a void sky realm master was extremely powerful and should be able to be used in this trial ground. However, Yuan believed that even if a void sky realm master's divine sense was powerful, it should be greatly limited in this place. As for Jin, his divine sense had been tempered by the starry sky quenching stone. Its sharpness and penetrating power were far stronger than ordinary divine senses. Even if his strength was not as strong as a void sky realm master, he could still extend it to about 100 meters in this place. Not long after the cultivator finished speaking, he stopped breathing and died. Zhuan casually took the cultivator's spirit ring and checked it. There were not many precious things in it, but he found 3 disaster crystals. Many cultivators who were close to Zhuan saw this too. Their bodies stiffened, and they quickly backed away. They couldn't use their divine sense in this place. Facing a cultivator who could use divine sense, wouldn't they be asking for trouble? This person must be a void sky realm master. We can't provoke him. Many cultivators hurriedly fled. They all thought that Jun was a void sky realm master who had concealed his cultivation. How could they dare to provoke such a terrifying person? You think you can come and go as you please? How can it be so cheap? Zhuan sneered, and the surrounding embryos of the original demonic gold sword shot out, intercepting the dozen or so cultivators. Chapter 1993. Heaven and Earth Sect, what do you want? A black-clothed man turned around, fear on his face, but he still calmly stared at the approaching Zhuan. Shouldn't I be the one asking you this question? Why did you all secretly come to my place? Zhuan said indifferently. We're just passing by. The black-clothed man said. Under Zhuan's control, the no-beginning devil gold sword embryo arrived in front of the black-clothed man's forehead in an instant. A powerful divine sense firmly locked onto the black-clothed man, making him not dare to move recklessly. This black-clothed man's cultivation was slightly higher than Zhuan's. He was a 2 calamities true god, but unfortunately his divine sense was suppressed in this place. In a battle between 2 people, one side could use divine sense to control a divine tool to attack, while the other side could only attack with his bare hands. Even if this person's cultivation was higher than Zhuan's, he was naturally at a disadvantage because he couldn't use divine sense. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Hand over all the disaster crystals you have. Zhuan said indifferently. Once these words were said, everyone was shocked. The disaster crystals were what they relied on to continue staying in this trial ground. If they handed over all of them, they would be eliminated. At that time, they would be sent out of the trial ground ahead of time. They had already experienced the benefits of the trial ground not long after they entered. Here, relying on the disaster crystals, they could quickly increase their cultivation. It was unknown how much faster it was outside, so how could they be willing to hand it over? Everyone, don't be afraid. Even if this person's divine sense is special, he's still a 1 calamity true god. There are more than a dozen of us here, so he definitely can't deal with all of us. Let's work together to kill this person and divide the disaster crystals equally. The black-clothed man's eyes flickered as he secretly transmitted his voice to the others. Unfortunately, just as this man finished transmitting his voice, the no-beginning devil gold sword embryo in front of him directly pierced through his forehead. Bang! The black-clothed man was instantly killed, but Zhuan's eyes were emotionless as he said, he thought his voice transmission was hidden, but he didn't expect my divine sense to detect it. Even if I don't know the content of his voice transmission, I can guess what it is. Do you all agree with this person's suggestion? The death of the black-clothed man shocked the rest of the people. They didn't dare to look at Zhuowen's eyes and immediately handed over the disaster crystals on their bodies. Although there were many benefits in the trial grounds, they still required one to be alive. If one didn't even have one's life, then all of this would just be an illusion. Zhuon collected the disaster crystals one by one. After counting them, he found that there were 30 of them. This number was beyond Zhuowen's expectations. After putting away the disaster crystals, the cultivators were surrounded by white light and disappeared. Clearly, they had been teleported out. Having received 43 disaster crystals in one go, Zhuon was in a good mood. Let's go ahead and take a look. I wonder if we can find Chuyu. Zhuon muttered in a low voice, and then he stomped his right foot and vanished on the spot. With the help of his spiritual consciousness, Zhuon was able to avoid many dangers in this canyon. Zhuon walked through this canyon for several days and found that the dangers of this canyon not only came from the cultivators, but also the natural traps here. For example, Zhuon once passed through a swamp, and a black python suddenly jumped out and dragged a cultivator into the swamp. The strength of the black python was not much stronger than the cultivator, but the cultivator couldn't use his spiritual consciousness, so he couldn't perceive the danger in advance. In the end, he was dragged into the swamp by the black python and strangled to death. In the canyon, there were many dangerous places similar to the swamp. It was because Zhuon had the help of his spiritual consciousness that he could perceive the danger in advance and avoid it every time. While Zhuowen was still making his way through the canyon, at the far end of the canyon, there was a desolate wasteland. At the very front of the wasteland, there was a huge broken gate pillar. The gate was ancient and vicissitudes of life. At a glance, one could tell that it was very old. At this moment, at the exit of the canyon, 5 figures rushed out. They were 3 men and 2 women. Of the 2 women, one of them was average-looking, but she was good at dressing up. The other woman was wearing a veil. Although he couldn't see the face of this veiled woman, he could tell from her autumn eyes that this woman's beauty was definitely not ordinary. Moreover, with the hazy feeling of the veil, this person had an additional trace of mysterious charm. Chuyu, this is the exit of the canyon. As for the trial ground, you should know that there are a total of 18 levels. This is the lowest level and has the least amount of calamity crystals. The higher you go, the more calamity crystals there are. A tall and handsome young man in a blue shirt said to the veiled woman with a smile on his face in a rather attentive manner. The veiled woman frowned. She wasn't used to the way the young man addressed her, but she didn't object. She bowed and said, "Senior Brother Gu, thank you for your help this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to get out." It's a small matter. The gate in front is the entrance to the real trial ground. However, the seniors of the cosmic sect who entered in the past mentioned that there are cultivators guarding the gate. However, Chuyu, don't worry. The 4 of us are from the cosmic sect. When these people hear the name of the cosmic sect, they won't stop us, the young man in blue said proudly. Yun Chuyu nodded slightly, but there was some worry in her eyes. She wasn't worried about herself, but about Zhuo. Back then, after she tested the stone tablet, Lei Qi had already noticed that something was wrong. With Lei Qi's methods, she would immediately notice Zhuon. Although Zhuon was strong, the difference between him and Lei Qi was too great. If he went up against Lei Qi, he would definitely die. If anything happens to Big Brother Zhuo, I, Yun Chuyu, swear that when I become strong, I will kill Lei Qi to pay tribute to Big Brother Zhuo, Yun Chuyu thought with determination. When the average-looking woman saw the young man in blue being so attentive to Yun Chuyu, the corners of her mouth twitched. She was a little unhappy. The young man in blue was called Gu Feng. He was one of the more outstanding disciples of the cosmic sect. Although he couldn't be compared to the top geniuses, his talent wasn't weak either. After cultivating for less than 1,000 years, he was already a 3 disasters true god. This time, Gu Feng entered the trial ground. As long as his luck wasn't too bad, he had a chance to break through the void sky realm and enter the ranks of the top geniuses of the cosmic sect. This woman had always admired Gu Feng. Unfortunately, she didn't have any feelings for him. Gu Feng didn't think much of her, so he didn't think much of her. This made the woman a little angry. Now that Yun Chuyu had joined their team, The three male cultivators in the team, including Gu Feng, were much more attentive to Yun Chuyu. This made the woman very jealous, and she secretly cursed this woman for being a vixen. "Let's go." Gu Feng's face was flushed. Although Yun Chuyu was wearing a veil, he was sure that Yun Chuyu's beauty was definitely the best he had ever seen in his life. If he could have such a beautiful female cultivator as his cultivation partner, Gu Feng's heart would burn like a fire. At this moment, he had to perform well. The group of 5 arrived in front of the doorpost. On the doorpost, there were 9 cultivators sitting cross-legged. The 9 cultivators were all men. The oldest looked to be in his 40s, and the youngest looked to be in his 30s. Gu Feng looked at the 9 cultivators with fear. He knew very well that these cultivators weren't newcomers. They were old people who had entered the trial ground in the past. This trial ground was an extremely famous trial ground in the Middle Universe. It was a trial ground that the great Brahma Heaven had specially created for the many cultivators in the Middle Universe. In the core star zone, only cultivators in the Middle Universe could freely enter this place after paying a certain amount of God stones. Of course, this place was very dangerous, and one was responsible for their own life and death. Regardless of one's status in the Middle Universe, the great Brahma Heaven wouldn't be responsible if one died here. Apart from the Central Universe, cultivators from the other 4 universes could only enter this trial ground through specific passageways. This time, the great Brahma Heaven could be said to be opening this trial ground to cultivators outside the Middle Universe. In the past, the galactic tournament had never been treated like this. Where there were people, there would be Jianghu. The trial ground didn't rely on cultivation, but on spiritual sense. Cultivators above the Void Sky realm could use spiritual sense, but those below the Void Sky realm had to rely on talent. If one didn't have talent in spiritual sense, then it would be safer to continue moving forward after reaching the Void Sky realm and being able to use spiritual sense. Most of the cultivators guarding the entrance were Zhongyu cultivators who couldn't advance any further in the trial grounds but were unwilling to leave. They hoped to accumulate enough calamity crystals by collecting tolls from newcomers so they could break through to the Void Sky realm and enter deeper into the trial grounds to obtain more calamity crystals. Of course, most of the cultivators guarding the door were at the bottom of the trial ground. The true geniuses and masters disdained to do this. When Gu Feng's group of 5 arrived at the door, the 9 cultivators sitting cross-legged at the door opened their eyes at the same time and stared coldly at Gu Feng's group. These 9 cultivators didn't have high cultivation. 8 of them were 2 calamities true god while the leader was 3 calamities true god. However, he didn't have any wind calamity aura. Clearly, he hadn't passed the wind calamity yet. Senior Marshall Brothers, we're disciples of the cosmic sect. I hope you'll let us in on account of our cosmic sect. Gu Feng felt that these 9 cultivators weren't very strong and showed a trace of disdain, but his tone was still polite. Cosmic sect? There was a powerful Void Sky cultivator from the cosmic sect before. I think he was called Lianze? The leader said indifferently. Gu Feng was slightly happy. Senior Marshall Brother Lianze is the #1 genius of our cosmic sect. His cultivation is unfathomable. In that case, take out 50 calamity crystals. 10 per person. That's quite a discount, the cultivator in the lead said calmly. Gu Feng's face froze. He didn't expect these cultivators to not give him any face even after he introduced himself. Maybe you don't know about the cosmic sect? The cosmic sect is one of the top 10 sects in the star field. Before Gu Feng finished speaking, a gust of wind swept over and landed heavily in front of him. He stopped talking and covered his body with his hands. Gu Feng groaned and involuntarily retreated dozens of steps. He looked at the leader in shock. Chapter 1994. Gu Feng's expression was gloomy. He didn't expect these people to be unafraid of the cosmic sect behind him. Moreover, Gu Feng also discovered that this cultivator's cultivation level was clearly lower than his, but he was actually at a disadvantage in that attack. Either hand over the calamity crystal or scram. The leader sneered. Gu Feng's face flushed red. Yun Chuyu was still behind him, so how could he be afraid? Gu Feng was a cultivator who had survived 2 wind disasters. Logically speaking, his strength shouldn't be weaker than the leader's. He believed that he was only pushed back by luck. You want us to scram? It's not that easy. Gu Feng snorted and took out a long saber. With a stomp of his right foot, he flew toward the cultivator in front of him. The other 8 cultivators guarding the gate sneered, as if they weren't worried about the leader at all. You're dead. Gu Feng was as fast as the wind. In an instant, he was in front of the cultivator. The long saber in his hand was like a ray of light as it slashed toward the cultivator's neck. Unfortunately, the cultivator didn't move. He just looked at Gu Feng indifferently. Gu Feng thought that the cultivator was scared stiff, and he felt even more proud. Senior brother Gu Feng, watch your back. Suddenly, a cry of alarm sounded. Gu Feng, who was originally proud, stiffened. Then he felt pain in his right hand. The long saber that was supposed to fall suddenly flew out. More accurately, even his entire right hand flew out. Ah! Gu Feng screamed and hurriedly retreated. Only then did he realize that it was a small axe that had cut off his right hand. Moreover, this small axe was floating beside the cultivator. The cultivator grabbed Gu Feng's right hand and summoned a ball of fire to burn it. He lightly weighed Gu Feng's long saber divine weapon and clicked his tongue in wonder. This saber is not bad. Divine sense? How can you use divine sense? Aren't cultivators below the Void Sky realm unable to use divine sense here? Gu Feng's heart sank. His eyes were filled with fear. If his divine sense wasn't suppressed here, the cultivator in front of him wouldn't have been able to use that small axe to cut off his right hand so easily. Unfortunately, he had lost his divine sense and could only use his vision to judge danger like an ordinary person. That was why his right hand was easily chopped off by the cultivator in front of him. What a country bumpkin. In this place, cultivation is nothing. Only a powerful divine sense is the way to go. Do you think you're stronger than Brother Yen just because you've survived 2 hurricanes? What a frog at the bottom of a well, one of the cultivators behind said with a ridiculing tone. The cultivator, who was called Brother Yen by the cultivator behind him, casually waved his long saber and said indifferently, "Little rookie, in this place, all cultivators below the Void Sky realm have the same starting point. Even if you are a powerful true god 3 disasters who has survived 15 wind disasters, you are no exception. But once you enter the trial grounds, your divine sense will be suppressed to the point that you won't be able to leave. Perhaps even some first disaster true gods might be able to kill you. Your pride in the outside world means nothing here. I've been cultivating here for a much longer time than you. Although my aptitude is limited and I can't advance to the Void Sky realms so quickly, I've tempered my divine soul to an extremely powerful state. Now, my divine sense can extend to about 5 meters. Although 5 meters might seem insignificant, I can kill a rookie like you who can't even extend your divine sense with a raise of my hand." Gu Feng's face was pale and bloodless. Even Yun Chuyu and the others behind him didn't look any better. This was their first time entering the trial grounds and they thought that everyone couldn't extend their divine sense. Now, they learned from Brother Yen that it was possible for cultivators below the Void Sky realm to extend their divine sense. In this situation where most cultivators' divine sense was suppressed, being able to extend one's divine sense was definitely an invincible existence. Hand over 50 disaster crystals and I won't make things difficult for you. I'll let you pass through this gate, Brother Yen said indifferently. Gu Feng frowned. He didn't have 10 calamity crystals on him. He had obtained 6 calamity crystals from the stone tablet, but he had used 4 of them when he entered this place. He only had 2 calamity crystals left. However, Gu Feng knew that his 2 junior brothers and that junior sister only had 8 disaster crystals in total. Even if he asked, he couldn't take all of their disaster crystals. Otherwise, they would definitely be eliminated. Senior apprentice Brother Gu Feng, you are the strongest among the 5 of us. I have discussed it with my 2 junior apprentice brothers. We can take out the calamity crystal for you. The female cultivator with average looks transmitted her voice to the gloomy Gu Feng. Gu Feng's expression relaxed and he replied, "Thank you, junior sister He. After I enter this time, I'll definitely come out to pick you up after I get enough disaster crystals. Senior brother, we naturally believe in you. However, I remember that you only have 2 disaster crystals on you, right? It seems that you're still missing 3 disaster crystals. The woman surnamed he suddenly reminded him. I'm also worried about this. Gu Feng said helplessly. Senior brother Gu, didn't Yun Chuyu say that she had 3 disaster crystals on her? We helped her so much in the canyon before. Now it's time for her to repay us, the female cultivator surnamed he said again. Gu Feng was startled and revealed a look of hesitation. When he met Yun Chuyu, Gu Feng was stunned by her temperament. When he learned that she was only a loose cultivator, Gu Feng regarded her as his exclusive property and wanted to make her his Dao companion in the future. However, the situation had changed and he was blocked at the entrance of the trial ground. He was really unwilling to accept this. After thinking about it, he decided to sacrifice Yun Chuyu. Although he had a very good impression of Yun Chuyu, he had never seen her real appearance. Naturally, he couldn't give up on entering the trial ground just because of this. Yun Chuyu was extremely intelligent and naturally saw Gu Feng and the female cultivator surnamed he talking to each other. Although she didn't know the specific content of their conversation, from the way they frequently looked at each other, she was afraid that the person they were talking about was her. As for why they were talking to each other, it was obvious that they didn't want her to know. They were talking about her but didn't want her to know. Obviously, what they were talking about was definitely not good for her. Thinking of this, Yun Chuyu quietly took out the escape talisman Juan gave her and hid it in her palm. Miss Yun, you saw that we helped you so much in the canyon. Now, we need your help with something. We hope that you can help us. The female cultivator surnamed he turned her head and smiled at Yun Chuyu. Yun Chuyu frowned slightly and said calmly, the 4 of you have indeed helped me a lot. What do you want me to help with? The female cultivator surnamed he said indifferently, Senior brother Gu only has 2 disaster crystals on him, and the 3 of us can only take out 5 disaster crystals. However, the entrance to this place requires 10 per person, so we hope that you can take out 3 disaster crystals to help us. Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes were filled with anger as she said, I only have 3 disaster crystals on me. If I give them all to you, won't I be eliminated immediately? The female cultivator surnamed he smiled faintly and said, Miss Yun, what are you saying? You are so weak. If you have them, they will be taken away by others. Why don't you just hand them over and save yourself? When this nebula tournament is over, you can come to the Qiankuan sect. We will definitely treat you well. Just as the female cultivator finished speaking, the other 2 men quietly moved behind Yun Chuyu to prevent her from running away. Chuyu, don't worry. The 3 disaster crystals you gave us won't go to waste. After I advance to the Void Sky realm, my status in the Qiankuan sect will also rise. At that time, I will bring you to the Qiankuan sect and directly make you an inner disciple. How about it? Gu Feng said calmly. Yun Chuyu was so angry that she laughed. She coldly looked at Gu Feng and the others and said, Sorry, if it were 2, I could still give them to you. However, 3 is out of the question. If that's the case, then don't blame us. The female cultivator surnamed he sneered. She kicked off the ground and rushed towards Yun Chuyu. The other 2 men also came from behind her. Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of determination. Divine power surged out from her hands and she blasted out a palm to each side. Puchi! The 4 of them immediately clashed. Yun Chuyu felt a sweet taste in her throat as she spat out a mouthful of blood. The veil on her face was pulled back, revealing her peerlessly beautiful face. She, on the other hand, was sent flying backwards like a withered flower. So beautiful! The 2 men who originally wanted to attack Yun Chuyu froze the moment they saw Yun Chuyu's face under the veil. They were stunned. Not only them, but even Gu Feng and the 9 cultivators guarding the door pillars had similar expressions. Die! The female cultivator surnamed he came back to her senses. Her eyes burned with jealousy. She suddenly rushed out and blasted out a palm without showing any mercy. The moment Yun Chuyu was sent flying, she immediately crushed the escape talisman in her hand. Then, she turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the canyon behind her. It's an escape talisman. Let's chase her. We can't let her escape. Gu Feng had already come back to his senses. He immediately chased in the direction Yun Chuyu had fled. At this moment, Gu Feng's heart was burning with passion. Yun Chuyu was indeed very beautiful. He made up his mind to make this woman his cultivation partner. Even if he couldn't do it, he still wanted to have a night of fun with her. Such a beautiful female cultivator was rare in the Westyu. He wasn't willing to let her go. The moment Gu Feng rushed out, the female cultivator surnamed He and the other two followed closely behind. Brother Yen, that female cultivator is really beautiful. Only you are worthy of having such a female cultivator. What right does that trash named Gu Feng have to have her? The 9 cultivators in front of the door pillars came back to their senses, and one of them said to Brother Yen. Brother Yan's eyes flashed, and he said in a deep voice, "The 8 of you continue to guard here. I'll go take a look. If there's a chance to be a hero saving a damsel in distress, I don't mind acting." As he spoke, Brother Yen stepped forward with his right foot and slowly followed. This person had a divine sense, so it would be easy for him to catch up with Gu Feng and the others. However, he didn't. Instead, he slowly followed behind. In the canyon, there were sparse withered trees growing under a cliff. Yun Chuyu landed under a withered tree. Her face was pale, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She collapsed beside the withered tree. Chapter 1995. Gallows, we can't stop here. Otherwise, they will eventually find us. Yun Chuyu forced herself to stand up and looked around. She realized that other than the barren cliffs, there was only the swamp in front of them. Seeing the pitch-black swamp, Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes showed hesitation. In the end, she made up her mind and went in. Gu Feng and the other 3 could not release their divine consciousness and could only rely on their sight to find her. As long as she hid in the swamp and did not move, she did not believe that Gu Feng and the other 3 would continue to search in the swamp. Not long after, Gu Feng and the other 3 arrived. Not here? Let's continue forward. Gu Feng frowned slightly and did not pay attention to the swamp. The 4 of them left without stopping. In the swamp, after Yun Chuyu saw that the 4 of them had left, she let out a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to come out, she realized that there was something wriggling under the swamp. What is it? Yun Chuyu's heart trembled and she quickly left the swamp. However, before she could completely leave the swamp, a black tentacle suddenly swept out and wrapped around her right leg. Yun Chuyu was lifted up. Her injuries were quite serious, and the tentacle was very tight. She could not break free at all. The entire swamp surged, and Yun Chuyu was horrified to discover that a terrifying giant beast had emerged from the swamp. The giant beast looked like an octopus. It had a huge head with a pair of oily green eyes and sharp fangs. Under its head, countless tentacles grew out, densely packed together. It was exceptionally terrifying. Gallows? Why is there such a giant beast in this place? Brother Yen, who was leisurely walking over, happened to see this scene. When he saw the giant beast in the swamp, his expression was extremely ugly. This beast was called Gallows, and it was an extremely famous, terrifying giant beast in the trial grounds. It was mostly seen above the 5th level of the trial grounds and was a very difficult fellow to deal with. Brother Yen could release his divine consciousness 5 meters away, and his strength was much stronger than other true gods. However, he knew very well that if he were to face Gallows, he would definitely die. God is jealous of her beauty. This beauty is dead for sure. Brother Yen kept his distance from the quagmire and sighed while shaking his head. Zhuan passed through the canyon and met many cultivators along the way. However, as long as they didn't provoke him, Zhuan didn't attack them. Of course, if there were cultivators who wanted to rob Zhuan because they had more people, Zhuan would not be soft-hearted and would rob them all back. Therefore, in just a few short days, Zhuan already had 75 pieces of disaster crystals on him. Zhuan had also heard from some of the cultivators that this was not the inner part of the trial by fire, but the outer part. It was said that the entrance to the trial by fire was at the end of the canyon. However, there seemed to be quite powerful cultivators guarding there. If one wanted to enter the trial grounds, they would have to pay 10 disaster crystals. The cultivators scattered in the canyon were either new cultivators or those who had less than 10 calamity crystals on them and planned to rob others to gather enough calamity crystals before entering the trial ground. This was also the reason why Zhuan was often targeted along the way. In this kind of place where one's spiritual sense was suppressed, one's cultivation was no longer an advantage. Instead, it was their numbers that gave them an advantage. Seeing that Zhuan was all alone, who else could these cultivators go for but Zhuan? Yun Chuyu couldn't have escaped so far. I know her injuries. Suddenly, Zhuan's divine sense detected a voice. When he heard the name Yun Chuyu, Zhuan's heart sank. At this moment, Gu Feng and the others were not far from Zhuan. The one who had just spoken was the female cultivator surnamed He. However, before she could finish speaking, a terrifying killing intent instantly descended, causing her body to tremble. Her face was pale as she looked at the young man in front of her. Not only her, but Gu Feng and the others were not much better. This killing intent was too terrifying, and it contained a powerful divine sense that suppressed them, making it difficult for them to move. "Senior, why are you looking for us?" Gu Feng reacted and hurriedly cupped his fists toward Zhuan. This person could release his divine sense, so he was definitely someone on the same level as Brother Yen. Such a true god could easily kill the four of them in this place. "Where's Yun Chuyu?" Zhuan asked with a gloomy gaze. Hearing this, Gu Feng and the others' hearts sank. Didn't Yun Chuyu say that she was a rogue cultivator? When did such a powerful existence appear behind her? "Senior, you've misunderstood. We don't know any Yun Chuyu," Gu Feng hurriedly said. But, unfortunately, just as Gu Feng finished speaking, he was slapped hard on the right side of his face. He fell to the ground and spat out a few teeth. "Where's Yun Chuyu?" Zhuan's gaze became more and more gloomy, and his killing intent became more and more terrifying, causing the four of them to tremble in fear. "We're also looking for Yun Chuyu, but we still haven't found her. Senior, please don't kill us. We don't mean any harm," the female cultivator with the surname He hurriedly said. Zhuan completely ignored the female cultivator with the surname He's pleas for mercy. His powerful divine sense turned into ropes, imprisoning all four of them. Then he brought the four of them, who were unable to move, towards the front of the canyon. Along the way, he did not find any trace of Yun Chuyu. Clearly, Yun Chuyu should be somewhere in front of the canyon. Zhuan's expression was anxious. He even spread out his torch dragon wings, and his entire person turned into an afterimage. Not long after, Ying approached the swamp where Yun Chuyu was previously. He also saw the giant beast, Gallows, in the swamp. At the same time, his divine sense also swept over Yun Chuyu, whose legs were entangled by Gallows. Although Yun Chuyu's entire body was covered in mud and her face was pitch black, making it impossible to see her appearance clearly, his divine sense was extremely powerful. Naturally, he immediately recognized Yun Chuyu. Especially when he saw that Gallows had actually opened his mouth wide, intending to swallow Yun Chuyu whole, Zhuan did not even think about it and took out the embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword. The 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword turned into a terrifying vortex of killing intent and blasted into Gallows's tentacles, instantly severing them. Yun Chuyu also fell into the swamp. Gallows roared angrily and turned his head to stare at Zhuan, who was rushing over. Countless tentacles swept toward Zhuan. Zhuan was not afraid of Gallows at all. The torch dragon wings spread out to the extreme. Zhuan was like a ghost as he dodged the incoming tentacles. The 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword that had originally swept out returned to his body, constantly cutting Gallows's tentacles. At the same time, Zhuan constantly closed the distance between him and Gallows. The moment Zhuan got close to Gallows, he took out the glorious purple galaxy sword and slashed down. A purple moon rose and slammed into Gallows's head. Unfortunately, Gallows's head was extremely hard. Not only did the purple moon fail to slash Gallows, but it also dissipated. Gallows roared angrily and spat out a ball of green venom. Zhuan dodged and passed through the venom. Then he circled behind Gallows and picked up Yun Chuyu, instantly leaving the swamp. "No, save us." Zhuan was busy with Yun Chuyu and did not care about Gu Feng and the others at all. At this moment, after Zhuan saved Yun Chuyu and left the swamp, Gu Feng and the others were abandoned by Zhuowen and eventually became Gallows's venting objects. Zhuan silently looked at Gu Feng and the others who were swallowed by Gallows, then turned to look at the stunned brother Yen behind him and said, "Who are you? Are you also chasing after Chuyu?" Brother Yen broke out in a cold sweat. Just now, when Zhuowen was controlling the embryo of the no-beginning demonic gold sword, he had seen it clearly. This guy could definitely release his divine sense, and his divine sense was much stronger than his own. "You've misunderstood. I'm the gatekeeper of the trial ground. I saw that this lady was being chased by Gu Feng and the other three, so I purposely came to lend a helping hand. I didn't expect to meet Gallows here." Brother Yen hurriedly waved his hand. At this moment, after swallowing Gu Feng and the others, Gallows turned his head. His green eyes stared straight at Zhuowen, sending chills down one's spine. Brother Yen felt a chill down his spine and kept retreating. However, what surprised him was that the young man who suddenly appeared in front of him did not run away. This person clearly could not blast open Gallows's head, so why didn't he run away? Zhuowen looked at Gallows indifferently. His true form was Devour, a powerful giant beast in the starry sky. How could he be afraid of this so-called Gallows? Zhuowen also let out a low roar. A flow of pressure from Devour burst out. This pressure formed the shadow of a giant beast, emerging behind Zhuowen. Gallows stopped roaring and even began to shiver. He looked at Devour's shadow in fright. He whimpered and then crawled into the swamp, not daring to come out. "Want to run? Do you think it's that easy?" Zhuowen sneered. He took a step forward and waved his sleeve. A terrifying devouring vortex emerged and swallowed the entire swamp. Gallows, who was hiding in the swamp, shivered. He didn't have his previous majesty. Zhuowen's mind flickered. The 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword turned into a vortex of murderous intent, drilling into Gallows' eyes. Gallows' head was so tough that even the glorious amethyst galaxy sword couldn't cut it. He could only start with Gallows' eyes. Gallows had been frightened by Devour's pressure. At this moment, he wasn't prepared at all. When the vortex of murderous intent formed by the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryos completely entered the beast's eyes, Gallows let out a mournful roar and kept rolling on the ground. The vortex of murderous intent wreaked havoc in Gallows' body, almost turning it into a mess. In the end, Gallows' head exploded, and he died completely. He was killed just like that? Brother Yen opened his mouth wide, looking at this scene in disbelief. At this moment, he looked at Zhuowen with awe and fear. Brother Yen wanted to leave, but Zhuowen's consciousness had locked onto him. He didn't dare to move. He could only smile bitterly and wait in place. "Brother Zhuo, it's great that you're okay." Yun Chuyu reacted. She curled up on Zhuowen's body and cried. Zhuowen looked at Yun Chuyu with a sigh. He could feel that Yun Chuyu's injuries were quite serious. Coupled with her unstable emotions, it had already become an internal injury. After Zhuowen used his divine power to completely remove the swamp on Yun Chuyu's surface, he found that Yun Chuyu's face was very pale and bloodless. Chapter 1996. Exploitation. Brother Yan's face was pale as he remained motionless. Zhuowen's divine sense was firmly locked onto him, so he didn't dare to move. His divine sense could only extend to 5 meters, but he was still enveloped by the young man's divine sense even though he was nearly 100 meters away from him. It was clear how terrifying this young man was. Zhuowen checked on Yun Chuyu again. After confirming that she was fine, he turned around and stared coldly at Brother Yen behind him. "Friend, this has nothing to do with me. I didn't touch this girl." Brother Yen hurriedly said. Zhuowen's mouth was full of a cold smile. This person secretly followed Yun Chuyu. He didn't believe that this person had good intentions. If Gaylord hadn't appeared, Zhuowen was sure that this person would have attacked Yun Chuyu. Zhuowen didn't have a good temper with this kind of person. "Brother Zhuowen, this person is the cultivator guarding the outer pillar of the trial grounds. He can also release his divine sense, but it can only extend to 5 meters. Yun Chuyu transmitted her voice to Zhuowen. Zhuowen was startled. He looked Brother Yen up and down and said in a low voice, "You can release your divine sense as well?" As far as I know, only cultivators above the virtual sky realm can release their divine sense. Divine senses below the virtual sky realm are basically suppressed. The meaning of Zhuowen's words was obvious. He wanted to ask this person how he could release his divine sense even though he wasn't at the virtual sky realm. Brother Yen cursed in his heart. Zhuon could release his divine sense himself, but he was asking him instead. However, Brother Yen didn't dare to not answer. The young man's divine sense was too powerful, and it was firmly locked onto him. If he felt that something was wrong, he would be killed by the young man. Friend, don't you know that you can temper your divine sense in the trial grounds? There are a total of 18 levels in the trial grounds. The higher you go, the better the effect of tempering your divine sense. Moreover, there are more calamity crystals. It is said that calamity crystals are everywhere on the 18th level. Brother Yen hurriedly explained. When he mentioned the 18th level, his eyes revealed a yearning. In other words, your divine sense was tempered in the trial grounds? Zhuon asked calmly. Brother Yen quickly replied, yes. However, I was only able to break through the first floor. I couldn't break through the second floor no matter what. The main reason is that my divine sense is too weak. Also, the entrance to the second floor is too difficult. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He was secretly surprised. From Brother Yan's tone, he could tell that this canyon was not the real training ground. The real training ground was probably at the end of the canyon. Generally speaking, how far can a void sky cultivator's spiritual sense extend when they first enter this place? Zhuon asked indifferently. Brother Yen thought for a while and said, those who have just entered the virtual sky are about 30 meters tall. If they reach the virtual sky for the first time, they can reach 50 meters. If they reach the virtual sky for the second time, they can reach 80 meters. If they reach the virtual sky for the third time, they can reach over 100 meters. At this point, Brother Yen glanced at Zhuon and thought that this person was definitely an expert who had reached the third step in the void sky. He was only pretending to be a pig in front of Brother Yen. He did not believe that a one calamity true God would be able to extend his divine sense so far when he had just entered this place. Moreover, after void sky experts enter the trial grounds, they can usually break through to the later floors. Their divine sense will also become stronger as they temper it. Brother Yen chuckled and said, of course, in terms of benefits, true gods benefit the most from the trial grounds because the calamity crystals here are much more effective for true gods. As long as they have enough calamity crystals, true gods can quickly pass through calamities and become stronger. Zhuon nodded and continued, since the trial grounds have 18 levels, has anyone entered the 18th level? Brother Yen frowned and shook his head. I have stayed in the trial grounds for several hundred years, but I have never heard of anyone entering the 18th level. At least until now, no one in Zhongyu has. However, this time, the trial grounds are open to the other 4 areas. Perhaps a world-shaking genius will appear and enter the 18th level. Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he said, then take me there now. Brother Yen looked hesitant and reluctantly looked at the already dead Gallo. After a series of obsequious words, he decided to lead the way. Zhuowen's gaze was very sharp, so he naturally caught Brother Yan's expression. Zhuon jumped down and landed beside Gallo's corpse. Soon after, his powerful divine sense began to check Gallo's body over and over again. Suddenly, Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. Soon after, the glorious amethyst galaxy sword in his right hand slashed at the vicinity of Gallo's eyes. Then, his right hand groped around inside and took out a palm-sized irregular black stone. The color of this black stone was very similar to a calamity crystal. Moreover, what Zhuon praised was that the aura of this stone was almost exactly the same as that of a calamity crystal. Moreover, the aura of this stone was purer than that of a calamity crystal. Brother Yen also noticed Zhuowen's behavior and sighed in his heart. He knew that his unintentional action just now had exposed his intentions. Zhuon arrived in front of Brother Yen and asked indifferently, "This is also a calamity crystal?" Brother Yen cupped his fists and said, "This is a calamity crystal core. The energy inside is even purer than that of a calamity crystal." There are many calamity crystals hidden deep underground in the trial grounds. The exotic beasts in the trial grounds all evolve and grow by devouring calamity crystals. The exotic beasts here devour calamity crystals all year round, so a calamity crystal core is formed in their bodies. This is the essence of a calamity crystal. Zhuan nodded and unceremoniously put it away under Brother Yan's envious gaze. Lead the way. After saying that, Zhuan helped Yun Chuyu up. Under Brother Yan's lead, they arrived in front of the gate at the end of the canyon. Brother Yan. The 8 black-robed cultivators who were originally sitting cross-legged in front of the gate noticed Brother Yan's arrival and stood up one after another. However, when they saw Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu behind Brother Yan, their gazes all became alert. Zhuowen raised his head and looked at the gate in front of him. He knew that this was the entrance to the trial grounds. Everyone, please calm down. This is Brother Zhua. He's entering the trial grounds this time, so please don't block the gate, Brother Yan said somewhat awkwardly. Brother Yan, what's wrong with you? If you want to enter the gate, you need 10 calamity crystals. This person isn't a void sky expert, so why can't he enter? One of the black-robed cultivators said unhappily. Brother Yan's expression darkened. Just as he was about to reprimand them, Zhuan suddenly said, "So you have this kind of rule?" Before Zhuowen could finish speaking, he was interrupted by the black-robed cultivator who spoke just now. Of course. If you know what's good for you, take out 20 calamity crystals and leave the female cultivator beside you behind. Get in. Brother Yan had a bad feeling. He quickly turned around and cupped his hands toward Zhuan. Brother Zhua, this person doesn't know any better. Please forgive him. I'll immediately teach this arrogant guy a lesson. Brother Yan's words immediately stunned the 8 cultivators in front of the gate. The young man in front of them was only a 1 calamity true god, while Brother Yan was a 3 calamities true god who could release his divine sense. Why was Brother Yan so respectful and even a little reverent to this young man? There's no need to trouble you, Zhuan said coldly as his powerful divine sense swept out. The black-robed cultivator who spoke rudely suddenly cried out in alarm. He felt his whole body relax and his whole body was suspended in the air. Moreover, his head was facing down as if his right leg was lifted by someone. Divine sense? What a powerful divine sense! The 7 black-robed cultivators involuntarily took a few steps back. They could feel that this young man's divine sense was even stronger than their Brother Yan's. No wonder their Brother Yan was so respectful to this person. They didn't expect him to be so powerful. The cultivator who was taught a lesson was even more regretful and quickly begged for mercy. Zhuowen sneered and threw the black-robed cultivator to the ground. He said indifferently, "This friend reminded me that to enter the trial ground, disaster crystals are indeed needed." Speaking until here, Zhuowen stretched out his right hand and continued, "I won't be too ruthless. Take out 90% of the disaster crystals you have. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." Brother Yan's heart trembled. He cursed the black-robed cultivator for offending Zhuowen at this juncture and causing them to lose disaster crystals. Facing Zhuowen, he didn't dare to not hand over the disaster crystals. It was too easy for this person to kill him. "Sir, this is 90% of the disaster crystals I have on me. Please count them." Brother Yan's posture was very humble. He also changed his address from friend to sir. Zhuowen took the disaster crystals from Brother Yan and found that there were more than 400 disaster crystals, which made him quite satisfied. With Brother Yan as an example, the other 8 cultivators eagerly delivered the calamity crystals to him, especially the cultivator who was taught a lesson. Although he was grimacing, the smile on his face was the thickest. The total amount of disaster crystal stones handed over by the 8 cultivators was more than 100. Including Brother Yan's, Zhuowen had obtained more than 500 disaster crystal stones. This harvest could not be said to be not generous. "Chuyu, take these 100 disaster crystals, just in case." Zhuowen took out 100 disaster crystals and handed them to Yun Chuyu. Yun Chuyu hurriedly shook her head and said flatteringly, "Brother Zhua, this is too much. I can't take it." "Take it. If you want to become stronger, you need these disaster crystals. Don't you want to become stronger?" Zhuowen said indifferently. Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes flashed. After a slight hesitation, she still took the disaster crystals. She carried a blood feud on her back, and her enemy Lei Qi was so powerful. She had to become stronger as soon as possible. Otherwise, she wouldn't have a chance to take revenge. Sir, are you going in now? Brother Yen smiled wholeheartedly, but in his heart, he couldn't wait for Zhuan to leave. Zhuan shook his head and said, I'll go in later. In any case, I still have 50 years here. Let me finish absorbing the disaster crystals first. After saying that, Yuan brought Yun Chuyu to a place not far from the gate. At the same time, he used the 10,000 engulfment to set up a shielding array. Within the shielding array, he set up a level 3 trap array. Inside the trap array, he also set up a level 3 killing array. Brother Yen was quite strong, but if he wanted to break into this array, he would definitely be entangled. When that happened, Zhuan would be able to easily kill him. A level 3 array. Chapter 1997. 6 Lightning Disasters, Big Brother Zhua. Looking at the formation around them, Yun Chuyu looked at Zhuan in confusion. Chuyu, the trial grounds are definitely filled with difficulties. Generally speaking, the majority of those who enter are looking for disaster crystals. Since we now have enough disaster crystals, we should work hard to increase our strength first, Zhuan said with a smile. Yun Chuyu nodded. She could vaguely guess Zhuan's thoughts. Her attention was focused on the disaster crystals Zhuan had given her, and her beautiful eyes glowed. While Zhuan and Yun Chuyu were cultivating inside the formation, Brother Yen and the others could only stay outside and watch gloomily. Time slowly passed, and quite a few newcomers entered. Brother Yen and the others naturally did not let go of the disaster crystals on these newcomers. Of course, they did not go too far. They only collected 10 disaster crystals per person according to the old rules. Zhuan had absorbed 400 disaster crystals, which took him 3 months. His aura had also become much more terrifying. In the process of absorbing the disaster crystals, Zhuan had already sent down the 3rd lightning disaster. However, Zhuan had used all life formless to hide his aura and hide it from the lightning disaster. After absorbing 400 calamity crystals, Zhuan's aura had soared to an extremely terrifying degree. The 4th and 5th lightning calamity had followed, but he had been suppressing them all this time. It was the same for Yun Chuyu. After absorbing 100 disaster crystals, Yun Chuyu had sent down 3 lightning disasters. However, all of them were covered by all life formless, so the lightning disaster did not completely descend. 10 disaster crystals. If you can't take them out, then get the hell out of here. At this moment, Brother Yen and the 8 black-robed cultivators were still sitting cross-legged in front of the gate pillar. There were 2 cultivators standing in front of the gate pillar. They were a man and a woman. The man looked ordinary, but his aura was quite vast. His clothes were also extremely luxurious. It was obvious that he came from an extraordinary background. The woman wore a bright red silk dress. Her figure was graceful, and her eyes were filled with a hint of seduction. You might not know who I am, right? I am Liang Dan, a disciple of the Void Flush Peak. My father is an elder of the Void Flush Peak. I hope that the few of you can make things convenient for us. The man was very polite, but the arrogance in his eyes was very obvious. It was obvious that this man was very confident in his identity. The charming woman beside him watched everything in silence. She was well aware of how powerful the Void Rush Peak was. The Void Piercing Peak was also one of the 10 great sects of the Star Field. However, it was not a force of the Dongyu sect, but a force of the Shiyu sect. With the backing of the Void Flushing Peak, she believed that the 9 men would still give her some face. Unfortunately, Brother Yen did not even bother to look at the man as he gave him a slap. Liang Dan's face was flushed red. He did not expect Brother Yen to be so arrogant. He attacked without saying a word. Thinking of this, Liang Dan snorted in his heart. He moved his right leg, intending to avoid Brother Yan's slap. But soon, Liang Dan realized that something was wrong. His entire body stiffened, and his feet were rooted to the ground. Divine sense? You can actually use divine sense? You're just a true god. How is this possible? Liang Dan shouted in shock. Unfortunately, he was interrupted as soon as he opened his mouth. Brother Yan's slap landed on his face ruthlessly. Slap. Liang Dan fell to the ground in a sorry state. His right cheek was swollen, and he spat out more than 10 teeth. Is the Void Flush Peak that great? 3 months ago, I even beat up the few fellows from the Heaven and Earth sect. Who do you think you are? Even if I kill you here, the Peak Master of the Void Flush Peak won't dare to come to Zhongyu to look for me directly. If you're still so hesitant, I'll kill you directly. Brother Yen stood up and walked toward Liang Dan with a murderous look on his face. Liang Dan was so scared that he wet his pants. He did not care about his image as he moved toward Brother Yen. Trash. If you can't hand over 10 calamity crystals, get out of here and go to the canyon behind to rob others. Brother Yen said in disdain. The 9 black-robed cultivators behind him roared with laughter, causing Liang Dan's face to turn green and red. However, he did not dare to do anything. The charming lady hurried to Liang Dan's side. Her face was pale. She did not expect the Void Flush Peak to be useless in this trial ground. Boom! Suddenly, the shielding array near the door pillar exploded, and 2 figures walked out from it. Brother Yen also noticed them, and his face changed slightly. He knew that Zhuan had come out from his seclusion. Rumble! However, before Brother Yen could go forward to welcome them, a terrifying sound of thunder came from above their heads. Then a huge lightning gate was formed. Not long after this lightning gate was formed, another lightning gate was formed. One after another, lightning gates appeared. There were a total of 6 lightning gates floating in the sky, and they were arranged neatly. Countless black thunderbolts lingered around them, and it looked extremely strange. 6 lightning calamities stacked together? Brother Yen was shocked. He quickly stepped back and looked at the 6 lightning gates floating in the sky in disbelief. To a true god, a lightning calamity was extremely terrifying. Every lightning calamity was fatal. Therefore, when a true god went through a lightning calamity, they would be extremely careful. They would only go through a lightning calamity after making sufficient preparations. Moreover, there would definitely not be a true god who would go through multiple lightning calamities. This was because the terror of a lightning calamity stacked together was not as simple as 1 + 1. It was absolutely terrifying. Now, Yun went through 6 lightning calamities as soon as he came out. Wasn't that just courting death? Although Brother Yen knew that Yun was indeed powerful, he also felt that this person was courting death. The others present were also shocked. Obviously, they also felt that Zhuowen's method was too dangerous and too bold. Brother Zhu, Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. She first looked at the 6 lightning gates in the sky, then looked at the violent energy on Zhuowen's body. She could feel that the 3 lightning calamities that belonged to her were not targeted at her, but at Tun. Chuyu, stay away for now. Wait for me to go through this lightning calamity, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Yun Chuyu's eyes reddened. Her heart was filled with gratitude. She knew that Yun was helping her go through the lightning calamity. Ever since she was young, no one had ever treated her as well as Yun. At this moment, she had the urge to cry. Stay away from me first. Otherwise, you will distract me. Seeing Yun Chuyu's sad expression, Yun could vaguely guess what Yun Chuyu was thinking. He felt a headache coming on. The reason why he helped Yun Chuyu go through the lightning calamity was actually selfish. His Heaven's Thunder Eye could rely on the lightning calamity to quickly accumulate the energy of the heavenly lightning. He took the lightning calamity for Yun Chuyu because he wanted to help his Heaven's Thunder Eye accumulate more heavenly lightning. Of course, even if he had the Heaven's Thunder Eye, facing 6 lightning calamities stacked together still made him feel pressured. Yun Chuyu did not insist. It was just as Zhuowen said. She was really hindering him from going through the lightning calamity by staying by Zhuowen's side. Is this guy crazy? Liang Dan, who was originally scared shitless by Brother Yen, forgot about his embarrassment as he stared blankly at Zhuowen, who was preparing to go through the lightning calamity. It's him? It's actually him. The charming woman standing beside Liang Dan trembled the moment she saw Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen's attention was completely focused on the 6 lightning gates in the sky. Rumble! The 6 lightning gates opened at the same time. 6 terrifying lightning bolts descended from all directions with Zhuowen as the center and gathered towards Jun. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. With a wave of his sleeve, 5 powerful devouring vortexes appeared beside him. The 5 devouring vortexes blocked 5 of the lightning bolts. The Heaven's Thunder Eye released a powerful devouring power and swallowed the lightning bolt in front. The Heaven's Thunder Eye's devouring speed was very fast. After swallowing that lightning bolt, it continued to surge towards the other 5 lightning bolts. Soon, the 5 lightning bolts were completely devoured by the Heaven's Thunder Eye. At the same time, the 6 lightning gates released the second wave of lightning bolts. Zhuowen had absorbed so many calamity crystals that his strength was much stronger than before. In addition, the Heaven's Thunder Eye could restrain the lightning calamity. Therefore, it was not particularly difficult for Zhuowen to deal with the next wave of lightning bolts. Wave after wave of lightning bolts descended. Although Zhuowen looked relaxed, the occasional black lightning bolt was able to create a huge crater when it landed on the ground. This showed how terrifying the lightning bolts were. After dealing with the 9th wave of lightning bolts, the lightning gates became much quieter. However, Zhuowen did not let down his guard. He had gone through a few lightning calamities and knew that there were 10 waves of lightning bolts brewing in the lightning gates. Of course, the 10th wave was also the most terrifying wave. The lightning gates brewed for a full 10 breaths of time before the 10th wave of lightning bolts finally descended. Each lightning gate had 10 lightning bolts descending. The 6 lightning gates had a total of 60 lightning bolts. Moreover, these 60 lightning bolts were not stationary. Instead, they intertwined and rotated at high speed, forming a terrifying lightning ball in the shape of a grid. The surface of the lightning ball was constantly flowing with lightning bolts. It was as if the slightest touch could completely cut all matter into pieces. Big Brother Zhua, Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes were slightly red. She could feel that the lightning ball formed by the 10th wave of lightning calamity was extremely terrifying. I wonder if the Heaven's Thunder Eye can withstand the 10th wave of lightning balls. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He could also feel the power of the falling lightning balls. Chapter 1998. Meeting Sequoia again. Zhuowen did not expect the Heavenly Thunder Eye to leave his glabella. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Thunder Eye was too fast. Zhuowen did not have time to catch it before it left Zhuowen's range. BZZT BZZT BZZT. The Heavenly Thunder Eye dove into the ball of lightning and exploded with the sound of thunder. The falling ball of lightning was instantly annihilated while the Heavenly Thunder Eye flew out unscathed and returned to Zhuowen's glabella. Zhuowen checked with his divine sense and was pleasantly surprised to find that the number of bolts of lightning in the Heavenly Thunder Eye had increased from 2 to 20. This was a 10-fold increase. With so many bolts of lightning, if Zhuowen met Lei Qi again, he would not be in such a sorry state like last time. Of course, it was still wishful thinking to use these bolts of lightning to fight Lei Qi. After all, the difference between Zhuowen and Lei Qi was not small. It passed. Big Brother Zhua is amazing. Yun Chuyu exclaimed in surprise. As for Brother Yen and the others in front of the gate, they were all stunned. They looked at Zhuowen as if he was a monster. At this moment, Zhuowen was satisfied. The Heavenly Thunder Eye's power had increased greatly, which meant that his trump card had become much stronger. Naturally, he was happy. Sir. Zhuowen brought Yun Chuyu to the front of the doorpost. Brother Yen immediately led the 8 black-robed cultivators to welcome them and spoke in a deep voice. Zhuowen nodded, and then he glanced at Liang Dan and the female cultivator behind him. Zhuowen especially glanced at the female cultivator, and then he calmly turned his head away. The charming female cultivator's face was pale. She knew that Zhuowen was pretending not to know her. Thinking of all the things that had happened between her and Zhuowen, the female cultivator felt uncomfortable. She did not expect Zhuowen to become so strong that she could only look up to him. Seeing that your harvest has been good recently, I'll be merciful this time and only take half of it. Zhuowen smirked and spread his right hand as he spoke to Brother Yen and the others. Ah, my lord? Brother Yen's eyes were filled with anger, but he didn't dare to express it. What? You collect disaster crystals from others, So why can't I collect protection fees from you? Zhuowen's voice gradually turned cold. The source of the disaster crystals in the hands of Brother Yen and the others was not legitimate. Therefore, Yuan did not have any psychological burden to take the disaster crystals from them. Brother Yen sighed and could only obediently hand over 50% of the disaster crystals on him. The other 8 naturally did not dare to disobey. Looking at the 240 disaster crystals in the storage bag, Zhuowen raised his brows. He was pleasantly surprised by the harvest of Brother Yen and the others. Recently, Zhongyu opened up the trial grounds to the 4 main regions, so there are a lot of newcomers here. Brother Yen explained carefully. After putting away the calamity crystal, Yuan led Yun Chuyu into the doorway. Yun. Suddenly, the charming female cultivator said. Zhuan stopped and looked expressionlessly at the female cultivator behind him. Yun Chuyu also felt that Zhuan was acting strangely. Her beautiful eyes slightly frowned as she looked at the charming female cultivator behind her. She curled her lips but did not say anything. Miss Hongshan, what's the matter? Zhuowen asked indifferently. Zhuan naturally knew this charming female cultivator. She was Hongshan from the Brahma Fiend Star Jianghong Trading Company and Wu Han's granddaughter. Back when Zhuan was being chased by Lei Qi's 5 subordinates, he happened to run into Wu Han and Hongshan. Wu Han coveted Zhuowen's fire spirit juice and profound yellow or vein and did not hold back at all. Zhuowen's good impression of Hongshan had long since disappeared. Although Zhuowen knew that Hongshan could also participate in the interstellar tournament, he did not expect to run into her here. It was quite a coincidence. Hongshan's pretty face paled. She could feel the coldness in Zhuowen's voice. She lowered her head and said, I let you down back then. I didn't know that grandfather would deal with you. I only said that you had a lot of potential and needed to be roped in, but I didn't expect. Yuan shook his head and said, You don't need to say any more. What's done is done. I don't want to ask about your matters. Let's leave it at that. After saying this, Zhuowen said to Brother Yen, If the 2 of them want to go in, you don't need to stop them. After saying this, Zhuowen completely disappeared from the doorway with Yun Chuyu. Hongshan stood there in a daze. She felt a lump in her throat, but she stubbornly refused to cry. Miss Hongshan, I didn't expect you to know such a capable person. I really misjudged you. Liang Dan hurriedly moved in front of Hongshan, a trace of reverence in his voice. Liang Dan and Hongshan had met in the canyon. Liang Dan had been stunned when he saw Hongshan and had walked together with her. In his heart, he had already decided that she would be his future companion. Liang Dan had also heard from Hongshan that she was only the granddaughter of the president of the Jianghong Trading Company on the Brahma Fiend planet. Liang Dan had also heard that the president of the Jianghong Trading Company, Wu Han, had been seriously injured and had been uprooted by the Dazzling Light Trading Company and the Long Rainbow Trading Company. Wu Han had even been killed by the 2 presidents. From then on, the Jianghong Trading Company had completely disappeared from the Brahma Fiend planet. Hongshan had been lucky enough to be teleported away by Wu Han and had entered the trial grounds to avoid being hunted down. Hongshan knew of Liang Dan's background, which was why she had acted together with him. Now, Hongshan was alone and had no one to rely on. The Jianghong Trading Company had been uprooted, and the Long Rainbow Trading Company and the Dazzling Light Trading Company were eyeing her covetously. She was very clear that if she couldn't find a strong pillar of support, even if she didn't die in the trial grounds, she wouldn't be able to live for long. The Long Rainbow Trading Company and the Dazzling Light Trading Company wouldn't let her go. Hongshan forced a smile and said, Senior brother Liang is too polite. Zhuan and I have only met once. We can't be considered good friends. The 2 of you, since the Lord has spoken, why aren't you getting in? Don't tell me you don't want to go in? Big brother Yen was suppressing a fire in his heart. Seeing Liang Dan prattling on and on, Big brother Yen was unusually irritated and couldn't help but speak coldly. AI, we'll go in now. Liang Dan had long since lost his previous arrogance and hurriedly pulled Hongshan into the doorway. After entering the doorway, golden ripples spread out in front of them. Misty fog surrounded them. These golden ripples are specifically targeted at the spirit? Zhuowen raised an eyebrow and looked at the golden ripples around him in surprise. he discovered that the golden ripples were constantly pouring into his spirit, constantly hammering his spirit like an awl. However, Zhuowen's spirit was far more powerful than the average cultivator's. The golden ripples that poured into his spirit did not affect him at all. Moreover, Zhuowen discovered that the moment the golden ripples entered his spirit, they were constantly tempering his spirit. He could clearly sense that his spirit was slowly strengthening, but the rate of strengthening was much slower. Compared to the relaxed Zhuowen, Yun Chuyu was not doing so well. Her face was ghastly pale as she bit down on her lower lip. It was as if she was enduring unimaginable pain. Chuyu, these golden ripples are very beneficial to the spirit. Once you endure it, your spirit and consciousness will become much stronger, Zhuowen said softly. Hearing this, Yun Chuyu's eyes flashed. She nodded gently and began to endure the pain of the golden ripples invading her spirit. She also attempted to use the golden ripples to temper her spirit. Just as Zhuowen said, her spirit had indeed grown by leaps and bounds. The two of them continued to walk until they finally reached the end of the passageway. The fog dispersed. What appeared in front of Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu was an incomparably large hall. Surrounding the hall was a vast expanse of rocky ground, and the rocky ground was surrounded by rolling fog. The rocky ground was densely packed with cultivators. Some of these cultivators were sitting cross-legged, silently cultivating. Others were shouting and fighting. It was extremely noisy. Moreover, these fights were not over the top. Bloodshed and even deaths would often occur. Zhuowen discovered that there was no one around the cultivators sitting cross-legged on the ground. It was extremely spacious. Many of the surrounding cultivators looked at the cultivators sitting cross-legged with reverence in their eyes. Zhuowen's gaze fell on the large hall in front of him. He discovered that the golden ripples here were even more intense. The closer he got to the large hall, the more intense the golden ripples became. Suddenly Yun Chuyu, who was beside Zhuowen, exclaimed in surprise, "Brother Zhuowen, it seems like I can extend my consciousness." Zhuowen looked at Yun Chuyu beside him and discovered that Yun Chuyu's consciousness could indeed be extended. Although it could only extend a few inches, it was still much better than not being able to extend her consciousness. "Chuyu, congratulations," Zhuowen said with a smile. Yun Chuyu smiled sweetly and immediately looked around. She asked doubtfully, "Is this the trial ground? There are so many people. Also, what is that large hall?" "Let's go and ask," Zhuowen said with a smile. "Brother, is this the first level of the trial ground? Also, what's with that large hall?" As he spoke, Zhuowen casually stopped a cultivator passing by and asked with a smile. The cultivator was slightly displeased. He looked at Zhuowen from head to toe and said snappily, "I can tell at a glance that you're a rookie who doesn't know anything. You're probably a cultivator from the other 4 regions who came to participate in the interstellar tournament, right?" Zhuowen smiled and nodded. He did not mind this person's unfriendly attitude at all. Seeing that Zhuowen's attitude was good, the person's expression eased a little. He continued, "In the trial ground, consciousness is more important than cultivation, especially in a place where consciousness is suppressed. The stronger one's consciousness is, the stronger one's strength will be. The trial ground is divided into a total of 18 levels. There is one on every level of this large hall. Only by passing the trial in this large hall can one enter the next level." Zhuowen nodded and immediately looked at the cultivators around him who were eager to give it a try but did not enter the large hall. He asked doubtfully, "If that's the case, why don't these cultivators outside enter the trial ground?" The cultivator shook his head and said, "The trial ground is not that simple. These people outside are all people who did not pass the trial ground. However, they are unwilling to stay on the first level, so they continue to cultivate, hoping to increase their strength and enter the second level." Chapter 1999. Zhou Zhuowen was startled, and then his gaze fell on the cultivators sitting cross-legged in front of the hall. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that these cultivators were sitting cross-legged, blocking the entrance of the hall. "I heard that there are a lot of disaster crystals in the trial ground. You can cultivate on the first floor, right? When the time comes, you can also pay the disaster crystals to enter the hall, right?" Yuan asked. The person shook his head and said, "The first floor is the place with the most cultivators in the trial ground. It's very chaotic here, and if you're not strong enough, even if you have the disaster crystals, you can't protect yourself. When I first came in, I also had some disaster crystals, but I was targeted by others. I see that you're also a newcomer, right? You'd better not reveal the disaster crystals on you, otherwise, if you're targeted by others, I'm afraid you won't be able to avoid a beating, and your life might even be in danger." Yuan nodded, somewhat surprised by this person's kind reminder. Thinking of this, Yuan took out 5 disaster crystals and secretly stuffed them to this person, saying, "Thank you for your explanation, brother. This is the reward, take it." At first, this person was a little confused, but when he took a look, it was actually 5 disaster crystals, and he almost cried out in surprise. He thought of something and immediately put away the disaster crystals, and looked around vigilantly. Then he whispered to Yuan, "Thank you, brother. It's fine, you deserve it." Yuan smiled and waved his hand. The cultivator in front of him could not release his divine sense, so he could not use his spirit ring, and could only hide his disaster crystals in his sleeve. After speaking, Yuan brought Yun Chuyu and walked towards the hall. This cultivator naturally saw Zhuowen's actions and saw that he was walking towards the hall. His eyes were filled with shock, and he hurriedly transmitted his voice to stop him. Unfortunately, Yuan turned a deaf ear. Dang dang dang. The sound of footsteps slowly sounded, and Yuan walked straight towards the hall. He deliberately spread the sound of his footsteps with his divine power. At this moment, the cultivators on the rocky ground all quieted down, and they stared straight at the young man walking towards the hall. In front of the main hall, the 5 cultivators slowly opened their eyes and calmly looked at the approaching Jun. "You want to enter the main hall to train?" The blue-robed cultivator in the lead asked calmly. Zhuowen said, 100 disaster crystals per person, or scram. The blue-robed cultivator said indifferently. Zhuowen did not mind, but continued, "I heard that this hall has been reserved by you guys? I remember that this training ground doesn't belong to you, right? What qualifications do you have to reserve this hall for everyone to train in, and even shamelessly ask for such a sky-high price?" As soon as he said this, the rocky ground became even more silent. Many cultivators looked at Zhuowen as if they were looking at an idiot. The cultivator who had been gifted the disaster crystal by Zhuowen had a bad feeling in his heart. He didn't expect Zhuowen to be so courageous, to actually dare to challenge those 5 cultivators. Those 5 were the strongest cultivators on the first floor, and all of them were existences that had cultivated out divine sense. "How dare you say such words? Today, I will teach you a lesson and let you know that there are some people you are not qualified to offend." The blue-robed cultivator's eyes were cold, and with a wave of his sleeve, a blue long sword appeared in his hand. His powerful divine sense wrapped around the blue long sword, and it turned into a blue light, directly stabbing toward Zhuowen's vital point. In the first floor, there were very few people who could cultivate divine sense. This blue-robed cultivator was definitely one of the best on the first floor. Moreover, Yuan found that this person's divine sense was stronger than Brother Yan's, and it was actually about 7 meters long. Thinking of Brother Yan's lonely look when he mentioned the first floor, Brother Yan was probably driven out by these 5 people. "This person is dead, he dared to offend Zhou. Many of the surrounding cultivators sneered at the sight of the aqua-blue longsword flying out. Zhou was able to stir up trouble here, so he naturally had a strong foundation and capital. Back then, Zhou had killed many cultivators here, which won him a great reputation. The cultivator who had been gifted the disaster crystal by Zhuowen turned pale and sighed in his heart. He knew that Zhuowen was doomed. Unfortunately, the aqua-blue longsword had just arrived in front of Zhuowen when it suddenly came to a halt. The long sword that had stopped suddenly changed direction and swept towards Zhou. What's going on? Zhou was completely dumbfounded. He stared blankly at the incoming aqua-blue sword, his divine sense pouring out of his divine soul in an attempt to block the oncoming sword. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried to control it, the long sword did not listen to his command and resolutely stabbed towards his vital point. Pucci. Zhou's head was cut off, fell to the ground, and rolled a few times. The entire rocky ground fell into silence. This scene was too strange. The sword that should have been charging toward Zhuowen had changed direction at the last moment and killed its master, Zhou Kuo. The 4 cultivators sitting cross-legged behind Zhou Kuo were shocked. They all stood up and looked at Zhuowen in shock. They were not stupid. They knew that Zhou Kuo's death was definitely related to the young man in front of them. Zhuowen slowly walked to Zhou Kuo's corpse, squatted down, and took off his spirit ring. After checking it, he found that there were a lot of disaster crystal stones in the spirit ring, more than 500 of them. If there is anyone who dares to stand in the toilet without taking a shit, then don't blame me, Zhen, for being impolite. After saying that, Zhuowen stared coldly at the other 4 cultivators, causing them to tremble all over. They lowered their heads, not daring to look at Zhuowen. Since this hall is a trial ground and the place to enter the 2nd floor, everyone can enter and leave at will. As for those who charge a fee to enter, they deserve to die. After saying that, the aqua-blue long sword turned into a blue line and quickly pierced through the necks of the 4 cultivators. Then, 4 more corpses appeared on the ground. After doing this, Zhuowen brought Yun Chuyu into the hall. After a brief moment of sluggishness, the rocky ground cheered and swarmed into the hall. They had wanted to enter the hall for a long time, but unfortunately, Zhou Kuo's group of 5 had always occupied the best position in the hall because they had cultivated their divine sense first. If they wanted to enter the trial ground, they had to pay 100 disaster crystal stones. In the 1st floor of the trial ground, it was too difficult to obtain 100 disaster crystal stones. Now, Yun had killed Zhou Kuo's group of 5 and abolished the fee system. How could they not be happy? How could they not be excited? Some people even shouted Zhuowen's name. Not long after Zhuowen entered the hall, a group of people rushed in behind him. Fortunately, the interior of the hall was very spacious, and these people did not dare to run in front of Zhuowen, so they did not hinder Zhuowen. Master Zhua. Suddenly, a respectful voice came from beside Zhuowen. Then, Zhuowen found that the cultivator he had asked before had walked to his side, his face full of caution. It's you. Do you know how the trial is conducted in this hall? Zhuowen smiled slightly, but his gaze fell on the 2 doors in front of the hall. He found that one of the doors was covered with a powerful restriction array, while the other door did not have any restrictions at all. Oh, Master Zhua, it's like this. These 2 doors represent 2 different trial methods. Hearing Zhuowen's question, the person said enthusiastically, the door with restrictions is the most direct trial. As long as your divine sense is strong enough, you can directly break it and then directly enter the 2nd floor. As for the door without restrictions, there is a black iron door with strange numbers on it. It is said that as long as you solve the strange numbers, the black iron door will open and automatically let you enter the 2nd floor. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows and said, there are 2 options, which one do you choose? The door with restrictions because it is the fastest. Generally, cultivators with strength will choose this one. As for the 2nd one, it is reserved for cultivators who are not strong enough. The cultivator said respectfully, I see, then I will try the door with restrictions first. Zhuowen nodded, and then he walked over to the entrance that was covered in restrictions. Zhuowen's divine sense was far superior to all the cultivators here. When he came to the door, he could feel that the restrictions on the door were extraordinary, but to him, it should not be too much of an obstacle. Zhuowen's actions naturally attracted the attention of all the cultivators. Zhou Kuo was killed by this person, which showed that this person's divine sense was very strong and could possibly enter the 2nd floor. Zhuowen's divine sense transformed into a palm and fiercely slammed into the restriction, shattering it. As expected, he is really strong. Zhou Kuo is strong enough, but he can't break the restriction on the door, but this person broke it so easily. Aren't you fucking talking nonsense? Didn't you see that this master killed Zhou Kuo in an instant? If this master can't break the restriction on the door, then we can forget about it. Sounds of discussion gradually rose. Everyone did not find it strange that Zhuowen was able to shatter the restriction on the door. Chu, go in. Zhuowen said to Yun Chuyu. Brother Zhu. Yun Chuyu was a little surprised. Zhuowen said with a smile. Don't worry, since I can break this restriction once, I can naturally break it a second time. Don't you want to avenge your father? If you stay on the first floor like this, I'm afraid you won't even pass the first round. Hearing this, Yun Chu did not hesitate and walked through the door. Bowen was right. She still had a blood feud on her shoulders. If she stayed on the first floor, it was very likely that she would be eliminated. If she lost the opportunity to enter this trial ground, it would be very difficult for her to have such a chance to advance so quickly again. After Yun Chuyu entered, another restriction appeared on the door, isolating Zhuowen outside. Clearly, only one person could enter the door. Bowen did not care at all. Once again, he condensed a large palm with his divine sense and slammed it fiercely on the restriction. Puchi. However, what shocked Zhuowen was that the moment his divine sense palm slammed into the restriction, it immediately dissipated. Chapter 2000. The 10th floor. Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he stared fixedly at the restriction gate in front of him. This restriction gate was too strange. Its aura was clearly the same as before, but his divine sense was actually repelled. Lord Zhuo, perhaps you don't know? That restrictive door can only be broken by the same person once. It's basically impossible to break it a second time. Instead, you'll suffer a backlash from the palace's power. The cultivator trembled as he spoke, but his heart was filled with sighs. In fact, he should have told Zhuowen about this earlier, but he had not thought of it before. He also did not expect that Zhuowen would actually let Yun Chuyu go in first. Was this not causing him trouble? The surrounding people also revealed a trace of pity. Clearly, they did not expect that Zhuowen would give this opportunity to the veiled woman. Are there no other opportunities? Zhuowen was shocked. He didn't expect there to be such a rule here. However, after giving it some thought, he felt relieved. If that was the case, wouldn't it mean that those powerful cultivators could let in as many people as they wanted? This was clearly a violation of the rules of the trial grounds. There is, but you can't enter this door with restrictions. You need to enter another door. You need to solve the problem on the black iron door before you can enter. The cultivator said helplessly. I see. Then I'll give it a try. Zhuowen nodded, and then he entered another door. Everyone at the back looked at each other and followed behind Zhuowen. There were no restrictions on the door, so it couldn't stop them at all. Furthermore, they were also very curious as to whether or not the powerful young man in front of them would be able to pass through the door of wisdom after losing the opportunity to enter the second level through martial strength. Zhuowen looked at the huge black iron door in front of him and smiled bitterly. The black iron door was extremely thick. Others might not be able to see it, but he could see that the restriction patterns on the black iron door existed on the inside and not on the outside. The restriction inside the black iron door was many times more advanced than the restriction on the other door. Zhuowen knew that the restriction within the black iron door should have been set up by a very powerful god formation master. Soon, Zhuowen's attention landed on the numbers on the iron door. When his gaze landed on the iron door, a hoarse voice rang out in his mind. There are 5 numbers here. Arrange the 5 numbers in a row. The first number must be adjacent to the second number, and the second number must be on the right of the first number. How many arrangements are there? You only have 10 breaths of time. Zhuowen's gaze landed on the numbers. The numbers were very strange. Zhuowen had never seen numbers like this before, and every number was different. However, when Zhuowen heard the voice, he was stunned for 2 seconds before a strange expression appeared on his face. This was because the problem that the voice that suddenly appeared in his mind was actually a problem of permutation and combination. Zhuowen was a university student in Huaxia in his previous life. After many years of examination, especially mathematics, he was very familiar with the so-called permutation and combination. Although his results were very poor, he was very familiar with many mathematical formulas. In addition, Zhuowen's calculation ability was even more terrifying than a computer. Once he grasped the formula, the permutation question was not difficult at all. Of course, Zhuowen's main advantage was that he knew the formula. Other cultivators did not know the formula and could only count them one by one. This was very easy to make mistakes. Moreover, the voice only gave him 10 breaths of time. In such a short time, it was very difficult to find the correct answer. Zhuan did not even think about it and said silently, 24. Just as Zhuan finished answering, the black iron door in front of him slowly opened. It solved so quickly? Many of the cultivators behind Zhuan were stunned on the spot. This scene was really shocking. Naturally, many cultivators had tried this door before, but all of them were wrong. Moreover, the problem was completely different every time they entered the door, so the solution was useless. Until the black iron door closed, many of the cultivators present were still in a daze. Could it be that this black iron door's problem has become easier? A cultivator did not believe it and came to the black iron door. After 10 breaths of time, the cultivator was fiercely pushed back by an invisible force and sat on the ground. Everyone was startled and realized that it was not that the problem had become easier, but that Zhuan who had entered was not simple. After stepping through the black iron door, there was still a very long passage, and the passage was surrounded by a misty fog. Zhuan's divine sense was strong enough, but it could not penetrate the surrounding fog. It's this golden ripple again. This golden ripple is much thicker than the first layer. Zhuan's eyes lit up. He immediately sat cross-legged and guided the golden ripple into his divine soul. Moreover, Zhuan felt that the absorption speed was too slow, so he used Devour's devouring power. Instantly, the golden ripple turned into a golden storm around him, constantly swirling and sweeping. Zhuan's absorption speed became faster and faster, and the golden storm became more turbulent. The surrounding golden ripple also became less and less. Zhuan sat there for a full 3 days, absorbing all the golden ripples in the area. With the help of the golden ripples, his divine sense improved by leaps and bounds. The range of his divine sense doubled, reaching 200 meters. Zhuan's lips curled. He knew that the increase of his divine sense in this place was the increase of his strength. Naturally, he was very happy. Oh, it seems that the main body has completely recovered. Zhuan exclaimed softly, then immediately summoned the white-clothed Zhuan. The main body's clothes were whiter than snow, and there was not a speck of dust on them. The black-clothed Zhuan gave all his equipment to the white-clothed Zhuan. The main body hasn't passed the lightning disaster yet. Why don't you let the main body absorb some disaster crystals to pass the lightning disaster and directly become a 2-disaster true god? Zhuan muttered. The main body had a human body, and he had planned to let the main body reach the void sky realm quickly. After all, the main body had the help of the illusory heavenly bridge. It would be much easier for the main body to reach the void sky realm compared to Devour. As for Devour, he planned to let him become an extreme grade true god, so he wasn't in a hurry to pass the lightning disaster. After all, he didn't have many disaster crystals. Moreover, as the number of lightning disasters increased, Zhuan realized that the number of disaster crystals he needed was also increasing. The number of disaster crystals he had wasn't enough for the black-clothed Zhuan's 6th lightning disaster to approach. Thus, Zhuan simply let the main body absorb the remaining disaster crystals. Zhuan stayed here for another 5 days. His main body squandered all the calamity crystals on him, and even absorbed all the calamity crystal cores he took out from Gaylord's body. What surprised Zhuan was that the energy within the disaster crystal nucleus was much denser than the disaster crystals. Zhuan estimated that 1 disaster crystal nucleus was equivalent to 1,000 disaster crystals. Originally, Zhuan had 500 disaster crystals and 1 disaster crystal nucleus. His main body's aura had reached the peak of the first disaster true god realm. Moreover, he had accumulated 10 lightning disasters. If I had known that the energy within the disaster crystal nucleus was so dense, I would have let the black-clothed Zhuan absorb it. The white-clothed Zhuan slowly stood up and looked at the 10 lightning gates in the sky. His gaze was grave. The main body had a human body, so the requirement for disaster crystals wasn't as abnormal as the black-clothed Zhuan's. 500 disaster crystals and 1 disaster crystal nucleus had allowed the main body to attract 10 lightning disasters. These 10 lightning disasters should be dealt with slowly. Perhaps there will be a need later. Zhuan's eyes flickered. The might of the 10 lightning gates was very terrifying. If he were to fight against an enemy, It would definitely have an unexpected effect. Zhuan didn't want to go through the lightning disaster right now. Thinking of this, Yuan waved his sleeve and used Formless to conceal his aura. The 10 lightning gates in the sky couldn't sense Zhuowen's aura and immediately collapsed. Of course, this collapse was only temporary. Once Zhuowen started fighting, his aura would definitely be exposed. At that time, the lightning gates would appear again. Because Zhuowen possessed the heavenly lightning eye, he wasn't afraid of lightning disasters. However, once the main body advanced to the first disaster True God realm, Yuan wouldn't have such strong resistance to fire. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to advance to the first disaster True God realm. It's time to go. Zhuan slowly walked out of the passage. After he walked out of the exit, he discovered that he was in a lake that stretched as far as the eye could see. In the center of the lake, there was a large hall. He knew that this was the second level of the training ground. There was no doubt that the number of people on the second level was much fewer than on the first level. However, it was still crowded. Moreover, on the second level, there were many cultivators who had cultivated divine consciousness. It was also much more orderly than on the first level. Moreover, no one stopped people from entering the large hall to train on the second level. Zhuan found Yun Chuyu, who was anxiously waiting near the large hall. Yun Chuyu had obviously also benefited from the golden ripples. Her divine consciousness could already reach about 10 meters. The large hall on the second level had the same structure as on the first level. It was also divided into 2 large doors. One door was for martial strength and the other was for intelligence. Just like the last time, Zhuan used his divine consciousness to destroy the door of the martial strength stage and sent Yun Chuyu in. Meanwhile, he entered the intelligence stage. After that, Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu went up level by level without a hitch. Soon, they arrived at the 10th level. Zhuowen's divine consciousness had also been greatly improved. It could now reach 2,000 meters, while Yun Chuyu's divine consciousness had reached 100 meters. Moreover, the cultivators on the 10th level were all extraordinary. None of them had a divine consciousness range of less than 100 meters. Big Brother Zhua, I don't plan to go any further. After entering the 10th level, I think I can enter the second round of the interstellar tournament. My results will definitely be good. I've troubled you along the way, Yun Chuyu said sincerely. Zhuan stopped and looked at Yun Chuyu. After seeing that she was serious, he nodded and said, Chuyu, you can cultivate on the 10th level from now on. There's still a lot of time. Moreover, there are many calamity crystals on the 10th level. With your current divine consciousness strength, it won't be a problem for you to become a true god 2 disasters. You can even become a true god 3 disasters before you leave. Yun Chuyu nodded and said softly, Big Brother Zhua, I know that you are very strong and that you will continue to advance. I heard from others that the trial grounds will become very frightening after the 10th level. You must be careful. Don't worry, I'll be careful. Chapter 2001. Mo Fan. Although there weren't many people on the 10th floor, there were at least tens of thousands of them. There were actually 3 doors in the hall on the 10th floor. 2 of them were the entrance to the martial force and intelligence force, while the 3rd door was the exit. Zhuan noticed that the 3rd door often flashed with white light, and each white light was one or several cultivators. Most of the cultivators who came out of the 3rd door were in a sorry state. Puchi. Another white light flashed, and then a cultivator spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The cultivator was bathed in blood, looking like a bloody man. It was an extremely miserable sight. Who has the Dragon King grass? Save me, I'm willing to exchange it for anything. I'm the eldest disciple of the Eastern Universe Heavenly Devil Island, Mo Fan. Save me. This bloody man kept wriggling on the ground, and at the same time, he was trembling. His voice was intermittent, and it was obvious that he was severely injured. Heavenly Devil Island? It's useless even if you're Lord Brahma of the Middle Universe. Your identity in the outside world is worthless here. In the hall, a triangular-eyed cultivator walked over slowly with 5 other cultivators and stepped on this man's head. Lu Guang, Mo Fan's eyes were spitting fire. Unfortunately, before he could say anything, The triangular-eyed cultivator named Lu Guang stepped on his mouth and made him shut up. What kind of trash are you? The eldest disciple of the Heavenly Devil Island? The Heavenly Devil Island is trash. How can it compare to our demonic pearl sect? Lu Guang said with a mocking smile. The surrounding people were discussing, but no cultivator dared to step forward to stop them. The demonic pearl sect was not simple. It was also one of the top 10 sects in the star field, and one of the 2 demonic sections. The other demonic sect was the Heavenly Devil Island. Moreover, the Heavenly Devil Island and the demonic pearl sect had a huge grudge. Zhuan heard this from the surrounding people. It was said that the Devil Pearl sect's sect master was the Heavenly Devil Island's island master's Dao companion. The 2 of them got together despite the opposition. However, the Devil Pearl sect's sect master had purposely become Dao companions with the Heavenly Devil Island's island master in order to obtain the island master's trust and then steal the Heavenly Devil Island's demonic book. With the loss of the demonic book, the Heavenly Devil Island suffered a great loss. Because of this, the Heavenly Devil Island and the Devil Pearl sect fought a great battle. In the end, both devil sects suffered great losses and sealed their sections. However, because the demonic pearl sect obtained the demonic book of Heavenly Demon Island, it quickly recovered. Moreover, its power grew stronger and stronger, showing signs of surpassing Heavenly Demon Island. It was precisely because of this grudge that the relationship between the 2 great devil sects could be said to be extremely bad. When the disciples of the 2 great devil sects met, they would fight at the slightest disagreement. Now that Mo Fan was heavily injured, with the enmity between the Devil Pearl sect and the Heavenly Devil Island, it would be strange if Lu Guang let Mo Fan go. Many of the surrounding people pitied Mo Fan. They knew that Mo Fan would suffer a fate worse than death now that he had fallen into Lu Guang's hands. The embryo of the no-beginning Devil Gold is very excited. The moment Zhuowen's gaze fell on Mo Fan, he realized that the embryo of the no-beginning Devil Gold in his spirit ring was constantly jumping and screaming, as if it had encountered something happy. The no-beginning Devil Gold should have sensed the aura of the Big Dipper Demon Fire. I'm afraid that Mo Fan has the Big Dipper Demon Fire on him, Xiao He suddenly said. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he took another look at Mo Fan. Yuan naturally knew this Mo Fan. Back then, the most dazzling disciple of the Heavenly Devil Island was the witch Yushan. Mo Fan was standing beside Yushan back then, so it was impossible for him not to attract attention. Lu Guang, what do you want? If junior sister Yushan comes back, you will suffer, Mo Fan said in a deep voice. Lu Guang laughed and said, Mo Fan, are you still so naive? Do you really think that the map of the Devil Fall Valley that your Heavenly Devil Island obtained is correct? You should have noticed that something is wrong, right? Your junior sister must be trapped in the Devil Fall Valley now. What? That map was purposely leaked to us by your Devil Pearl sect? Mo Fan's expression changed slightly. Lu Guang sneered and said, What do you think? The Devil Fall Valley is not that easy to enter. Our Devil Pearl sect doesn't have the map, but our senior brother Wei Shuo is good at deduction. I think he should be able to find the correct path to enter the Devil Fall Valley. As for you guys, you are just cannon fodder for senior brother Wei Shuo to explore the way. Mo Fan was furious, but unfortunately he was powerless and was firmly suppressed by Lu Guang's right foot. Bang! Lu Guang kicked Mo Fan without hesitation. Mo Fan groaned in pain and arched his waist like a cooked prawn. Beat him up, beat him to death, but don't kill him. Just beat him until he's half dead. I still have some use for him later. After Lu Guang finished speaking, he took a few steps back. The 5 cultivators behind Lu Guang grinned maliciously as they punched and kicked Mo Fan. The 5 cultivators controlled their strength very well. Although they couldn't kill Mo Fan, they could make him feel more pain. However, just as the 5 of them were hitting Mo Fan with all their might, a gust of wind blew. Then, a figure quickly grabbed Mo Fan and rushed out of the hall. Who is it? Where do you think you're going? The figure was so fast that the 5 of them didn't even have time to react. However, Lu Guang noticed it immediately. His powerful divine sense surged out and turned into an invisible palm that grabbed at the figure. Boom! Unfortunately, an even more powerful spiritual sense blasted over, causing the invisible palm to immediately disperse. Moreover, the figure had completely disappeared from the vicinity of the large hall. Chase. Lu Guang chased without hesitation. Unfortunately, Lu Guang quickly turned back with a gloomy look. After the figure rushed out of the hall, it spread out a pair of dragon wings and its speed instantly doubled. It immediately escaped the range of Lu Guang's divine sense. In the sky above a mountain range, a shadow flashed past and landed at the foot of the mountain. Zhuan put Mo Fan down and slowly folded the torch dragon wings on his back. Zhuan had been cultivating the torch dragon nine-headed infant technique. Therefore, the baby dragon on the torch dragon wings had grown a lot. At least, it looked much better than before. The torch dragon wing's speed was also much faster than before. Lu Guang and the 5 cultivators beside him were not simple. Lu Guang's cultivation had probably reached the peak of the first step of the virtual sky realm. As for the 5 cultivators beside him, even the weakest one was at the virtual sky realm. Lu Guang's divine sense had reached about 1,800 meters, which wasn't too far away from Zhuan's. In addition, with the help of the 5 cultivators, Lu Guang didn't dare to fight the 6 of them head-on. Therefore, he could only take Mo Fan by surprise. Fortunately, the divine sense here was limited, and his torch dragon wings were fast enough. Therefore, he could easily shake off Lu Guang. If they were in the outside world with Lu Guang's powerful divine sense, it would be impossible for Zhuan to shake him off so easily. "It's you?" Mo Fan opened his eyes and stared at Zhuan. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. "You know me?" Zhuan asked curiously. Mo Fan shook his head and said awkwardly, "Junior sister Yushan noticed you at Dongyu Square, so I met you once." Zhuan nodded. He had noticed when Yushan noticed him, but he didn't care. He didn't expect Mo Fan to remember him. "Thank you for saving me, brother. May I know your name?" Mo Fan cupped his fists and asked sincerely. He knew that if Zhuan hadn't helped him, he would have died without a doubt. Moreover, he would have been tortured to death. Zhuan waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "I'm Zhuan. Brother Mo, you said before that if anyone could take out the Dragon King herb, you would exchange it with anything, right?" "You have the Dragon King herb?" Mo Fan asked in surprise. Zhuan nodded and said, "I'm not that talented, but I did get a Dragon King herb by chance. However, I want something from you." The Dragon King herb was a level 7 divine herb. Even for Void Sky experts, it was extremely precious. Zhuan had obtained a few withered Dragon King herbs in the Fiery Cloud region, but they were all saved by the Qiyun celestial soil. Thinking of this, Zhuan was extremely grateful to the Qiyun celestial soil. Otherwise, those withered level 7 divine herbs would have been worthless to him. Brother Zhua, just say it. As long as I have it, I'll definitely exchange it with you," Mo Fan said hurriedly. Zhuan's eyes flickered and said, "I need the Big Dipper demonic fire." Mo Fan's face froze and he frowned. "Big Dipper demonic fire? Brother Zhua, what do you want it for?" "If it's not convenient for Brother Mo, I won't force you," Zhuan said indifferently. Mo Fan looked at his own condition and smiled bitterly. "Since Brother Zhua wants the Big Dipper demonic fire, I won't be stingy. However, I don't have much of it on me, and it was given to me by the island master." As he spoke, Mo Fan took out a transparent bottle. Inside the bottle, there was a palm-sized purplish-black flame. It was overflowing with demonic aura and looked extremely strange. "It's fine." Zhuan waved his hand. After taking the bottle, he took out the Dragon King herb and gave it to Mo Fan. Mo Fan was ecstatic as he held the Dragon King herb in his hand. He took a deep breath and cupped his hands at Zhuan. "Brother Zhua, thank you so much. You're my savior, and I won't dare to forget your kindness." Zhuan waved his hand. His intentions were not pure. "Brother Mo, you should heal your injuries first. After you've recovered, I still have some things to ask you about." After Zhuan spoke, he set up a concealment array around Mo Fan and walked out. Although Zhuan did not have much contact with Mo Fan, he could tell from his words and actions that Mo Fan was an extremely principled person. Therefore, he was not afraid that Mo Fan would bite the hand that fed him after he had recovered. Moreover, even if Mo Fan bit the hand that fed him, Yuan was not afraid. He had many trump cards with him now. When the time came, it would be hard to say who would emerge victorious. Looking at Zhuan, who had walked out of the concealment array, Mo Fan was grateful. He was not a fool. How could he not understand Zhuan's intentions? Chapter 2002. Devilfall Valley. Zhuan summoned the Thunder Fire Sword as he walked out of the array and asked, "Xiaohei, is this enough Big Dipper demonic fire?" The reason why Zhuan used the array was not only to reassure Mo Fan, but also to prevent Mo Fan from seeing the Thunder Fire Sword. After all, the Thunder Fire Sword was a divine weapon that could be used to refine weapons. It was hard for it not to attract Mo Fan's attention. Xiaohei crossed his arms as he looked at the Big Dipper demonic fire in the bottle. He shook his head and said, "It's too little. This amount of Big Dipper demonic fire can only refine a portion of the embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword." "How many can you refine?" Zhuan asked. "I'm not sure. You can let me try," Xiaohei said in a low voice. Zhuan nodded and said, "Okay, you can try first." After he finished speaking, Yin handed the embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword and the Big Dipper demonic fire to Xiaohei. Xiaohei took them and put them back into the spirit ring. Half a month later, Mo Fan walked out of the array. His face was rosy, and he was no longer as weak and pale as before. "Ha, brother Zhua, it's all thanks to your Dragon King grass. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to recover so quickly." Mo Fan was refreshed and he bowed deeply to Zhuan as soon as he came out. His tone was full of gratitude. Zhuan waved his hand and said, "Brother Mo, you're too polite. We're just taking what we need." Mo Fan said seriously, "Brother Zhua, you're too polite. Back then I was seriously injured. With your strength, it wouldn't have been difficult for you to kill me. At that time, not only did you have the Big Dipper demonic fire, you could have taken everything I had. However, you didn't." Zhuan looked at Mo Fan and nodded inwardly. Although Mo Fan was a demonic cultivator, he was also loyal. This made Zhuan view Mo Fan in a new light. "Brother Mo, I heard about the Devilfall Valley from Lu Guanzhong. What is that place? Also, why are there 3 gates on the 10th floor? What's the 3rd gate for?" Zhuan did not want to continue arguing with Mo Fan about the Big Dipper demonic flames, so he changed the topic appropriately. This was also the question that Zhuan wanted to ask the most. Mo Fan had a strange look in his eyes. Most disciples of the big forces in the star sector would have a good understanding of the trial grounds. However, Zhuan seemed to be completely clueless. However, when he recalled that Zhuan was a loose cultivator, Mo Fan felt relieved. "Brother Zhua, you may not know this, but the trial ground is divided into 18 levels. The first 10 levels are actually the basic trial. As long as you pass the trial in the main hall, you can enter the next level. But it's different after the 10th floor. Every floor after that is filled with many strange beasts. These strange beasts are native to the trial grounds and have terrifying strength. Even Void Sky cultivators can't guarantee that they won't die inside. However, the benefits after the 10th floor are extremely obvious. The golden ripples that train one's consciousness will become denser, allowing one's consciousness to become stronger and tougher. Its range will also be wider. Every floor after the 10th floor has a teleportation array. The teleportation array leads to the 3rd gate of the 10th floor. If you encounter danger in the following floors and can't move forward, you can use enough Calamity Crystal cores to teleport back. I encountered danger in the Devilfall Valley and was rescued by Junior's sister Yushan. I escaped and used the teleportation array to return to the 10th floor. I'm sure you know what happened after that, Brother Zhua." Mo Fan spoke tirelessly and gave a concise and thorough introduction of the trial grounds. Zhuan also had a general understanding of the trial grounds. After the 10th floor, one would have to pass through floor after floor. Generally, those who could enter the 10th floor and beyond were mostly geniuses. Therefore, the trial grounds would give these geniuses a chance. If one encountered danger after the 10th floor, they could use the teleportation array to teleport back to the 10th floor. However, there was only one chance. Once a genius was teleported back to the 10th floor, they would lose their way to the 10th floor and beyond. In other words, after Mo Fan was teleported back, he could not continue forward. He could only stay on the 10th floor until the trial grounds time limit ended. It could be said that most of the geniuses left on the 10th floor were cultivators who had been teleported back and lost their only chance. As for Yun Chuyu, she was brought in by Zhuan. Her strength was too weak and it was very difficult for her to enter the 11th floor. Therefore, after entering the 10th floor, Yun Chuyu gave up on advancing and cultivated here. Which floor is the Devil Fall Valley on? Zhuan asked. The Devil Fall Valley is on the 15th floor. It's an extremely dangerous area. Generally, cultivators who enter the 15th floor will not enter the Devil Fall Valley. Instead, they will directly enter the entrance to the 16th floor, Mo Fan said with a bitter smile. Zhuan did not answer. Instead, he quietly looked at Mo Fan. He was waiting for Mo Fan to reveal his purpose for entering the Devil Fall Valley. Mo Fan's eyes flashed as he continued. It is said that the Devil Fall Valley is the place where a demon Tao Almighty fell. According to the legends, this demon Tao Almighty was very terrifying. Back then, for some unknown reason, he went crazy and attacked the star field. He killed many experts from the 10 great sects and even killed several sect leaders. However, in the end, the ruler of the sky region, Lord Brahma, took action and forcefully suppressed this demon Tao Almighty. The place where the demon Tao Almighty fell was called the Devil Fall Valley. Our heavenly demon island accidentally obtained a map. It is said to be the correct route to the Devil Fall Valley. If we follow the route on the map, we will be able to find the demon Tao Almighty's cultivation method. We might even be able to obtain his inheritance. Unfortunately, that map is fake. Those bastards from the Demonic Pearl sect deliberately leaked it to our heavenly demon island. They are really despicable. My junior sister, she, is still trapped in the Devil Fall Valley. I hate it. Speaking until here, Mo Fan's veins were bulging and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. Zhuan was a little shocked. That demon Tao Almighty was too terrifying. He actually attacked the star field alone and heavily injured the 10 great sects. He even killed several sect leaders because of this. The sect leaders of the 10 great sects were all giants. It was said that their cultivators were terrifying existences who had reached at least the 6th or 7th steps of the Void Sky realm. Even so, several of these experts were killed by the demon Tao Almighty. It could be seen how powerful that demon Tao Almighty was. Mo Fan suddenly looked at Zhuan and said hesitantly, Brother Zhuan, I have observed you before. Your divine sense is very powerful. It is even more powerful than Lu Guang and I. Moreover, I can see that you have just arrived at the 10th level. You haven't even entered the 10th floor yet, but your divine sense is already so strong. Once you enter, your divine sense will undergo a transformation. If you can enter the 15th floor, can you go to Devil Fall Valley and ask my junior apprentice sister Yushan for help? Yuan waved his hand and said, Miss Yushan is a peerless genius of your heavenly demon island. She is very powerful. If even she is trapped in the Devil Fall Valley, I am afraid that I am powerless. Mo Fan's face was bitter, but he still took out a jade slip and handed it to Zhuan, saying, Brother Zhuan, this is the location of my junior sister. I also want to tell you that my junior sister has more Big Dipper demonic fire. Moreover, the Devil Fall Valley also has Big Dipper demonic fire. If you change your mind, you can go to the place marked on the jade slip. Zhuan calmly kept the jade slip and said in a deep voice, Brother Mo, don't worry. If I really have the strength to spare, I will go to the Devil Fall Valley to take a look. Mo Fan heaved a sigh of relief and said in a deep voice, Brother Zhua, you should be planning to enter the 11th level. That Lu Guangjian saved me and should be waiting for you in the main hall. This matter started because of me. Brother Zhuowen, follow behind me. After I deal with Lu Guang and the others, I will let you enter the main hall unimpeded. Zhuowen nodded silently and did not say anything. He silently followed behind Mo Fan. When the two of them arrived not far from the main hall, Zhuowen's consciousness deliberately scanned the surroundings, but he did not find Yun Chuyu. Previously, he had clearly asked Yun Chuyu to cultivate nearby. Now, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. Could something have happened? When Mo Fan and Juan arrived at the main hall, many cultivators who were cultivating cross-legged around the main hall opened their eyes and looked at Mo Fan in surprise. Half a month ago, the news of Mo Fan being seriously injured and rescued had spread like wildfire. That Lu Guang had spent a lot of manpower and resources to search for Mo Fan and Juan, but to no avail. Now that half a month had passed, these two people actually dared to take the initiative to come here. Were they planning to provoke that Lu Guang? Did you guys hear? Yesterday, Lord Lu Guang just took in a cultivation partner. Although that female cultivator's cultivation is not high, she is really beautiful. Really? Lord Lu Guang is a genius of the demonic pearl sect, one of the top 10 sections. It is that female cultivator's fortune to be chosen by him. Zhuowen's consciousness was powerful, so he immediately heard the conversation of the nearby cultivators. His gaze focused, and he had a bad premonition. He immediately rushed in front of the cultivator who was talking and asked in a deep voice, "What is the name of Lu Guang's cultivation partner?" The two cultivators looked at Zhuowen in surprise. However, when they felt the powerful consciousness on Zhuowen's body, their bodies trembled slightly, and they hurriedly said, I think her name is Yun Chuyu. She is indeed very beautiful. Where is Yun Chuyu now? Zhuowen asked murderously. In the main hall. Ever since she was taken away by Lord Lu Guang, Yun Chuyu has not come out. The two cultivators trembled as they spoke. Zhuowen's gaze was cold. With a kick of his right foot, he flew toward the main hall. Mo Fan also saw Zhuowen's strange behavior. Just as he was about to say something to stop Zhuowen, he had already reached the main hall's door. At this moment, the main hall's door was tightly shut. Apparently, Lu Guang and the others had closed it. It's you? Outside the door, two cultivators stood guard with their heads held high. They were two of the 5 cultivators who followed Lu Guang. The two of them immediately recognized Zhuowen. Without thinking, they took out their divine artifacts and attacked Zhuowen. Zhuowen took out the glorious purple galaxy sword in his right hand and slashed out. A purple moon and a glorious sun rose behind him at the same time. The 5th move of the Tao destroying sword technique, sun and moon attack. My consciousness. Not long after the two of them took out their divine artifacts, they were cut in half by the glorious purple galaxy sword. The divine artifacts that were flying in the air immediately fell, and the two cultivators' divine souls were also greatly affected. Slash. Chapter 2003. Exploding Void Pill. There was no one in the main hall. Yun Chuyu had been casually thrown on the ground, and the veil on her face had long been removed, revealing her beautiful face. At this moment, Yun Chuyu's entire body was bound, and she could not move at all. I've already given you one night to think about it. Have you made up your mind? Lu Guang sat in the front seat, his gaze burning as he looked at the graceful Yun Chuyu. As a genius of the Devil Pearl sect, Lu Guang had seen many beautiful female cultivators, but they all paled in comparison to Yun Chuyu. Once, when his divine consciousness accidentally probed Yun Chuyu's face, he was shocked. Yesterday, he kidnapped her and forced her to become his cultivation partner. Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes were filled with anger. She did not expect Lu Guang to be so despicable as to kidnap her and force her to become his cultivation partner. I'm sorry, but I'm already someone else's cultivation partner. Yun Chuyu said calmly. Lu Guang grinned and said, So what? As long as you tell me who your cultivation partner is, I'll just kill him, and you can choose me as your cultivation partner. Yun Chuyu glared at Lu Guang angrily. You're so charming even when you're angry. I've decided that you're my woman. Lu Guang laughed loudly. However, his smile quickly stiffened, and the originally tightly shut door was suddenly blasted open. Zhuowen slowly walked in and immediately saw Yun Chuyu, who was bound to the ground. He then looked at Lu Guang with murderous intent in his eyes. It's you. I didn't expect you to dare to come back. You're courting death. Lu Guang suddenly stood up, took out a giant axe, and swung it at Lu Guang. Zhuowen stomped his right foot and retreated from the main hall. Yun Chuyu was still inside. If they were to fight here, it was inevitable that Yun Chuyu would be affected. Where do you think you're going? Lu Guang snorted coldly and immediately chased after Zhuan. Under the control of his divine consciousness, the giant axe immediately swung at Zhuan. At the same time, the other three people in the main hall followed Lu Guang and took out their respective divine artifacts. Unfortunately, the moment the three of them came out, they were intercepted by Mo Fan. Mo Fan, you actually recovered so quickly? Lu Guang stared coldly at Mo Fan, who was blocking the three of them. Mo Fan completely ignored Lu Guang. With a wave of his right hand, he retrieved a demonic sword and slashed at the three people. In an instant, the three of them were suppressed to the point of being unable to breathe. Lu Guang was unable to restrain his anger. He activated his divine consciousness and wanted to turn around to deal with Mo Fan. Unfortunately, Yuan had already slashed out with his sword, fully displaying the characteristics of the glorious amethyst galaxy sword. Lu Guang's spiritual consciousness was indeed powerful, but under the glorious amethyst galaxy sword, it was just a slightly harder rope. Lu Guang did not care much about Zhuan. After all, Zhuan's aura was only at the peak of true God One disaster. His consciousness would definitely not be that strong. Hence, when facing Zhuan, he only threw the giant axe over and did not care much about it. Unfortunately, Lu Guang had made a fatal mistake. He had underestimated Zhuan. The moment Lu Guang's spiritual consciousness was completely cut off by the glorious amethyst galaxy sword, Lu Guang felt a sharp pain in his spiritual soul. The giant axe that had been thrown out trembled and stopped moving forward. As for Zhuan, it was as though he had teleported. He swept to Lu Guang's side and slashed at his waist with the glorious amethyst galaxy sword. At that moment, a strong sense of danger rose in Lu Guang's mind. He roared and the divine power in his body swelled and spread throughout his entire body. He wanted to take the blow head-on. Zhuan's speed was too fast. He could not react in time to block the attack and could only take it head-on. Bang! The sword slashed down and landed on Lu Guang's waist. Then, blood splattered. Lu Guang's waist was cut off by a third and the glorious amethyst galaxy sword was stuck. Inner armor? Zhuan looked at the dull inner armor on Lu Guang's waist and his eyes narrowed. Originally, the sword was enough to kill Lu Guang. Unfortunately, the inner armor had blocked most of the power. You're going to die. Lu Guang felt a heart-wrenching pain and roared. His powerful spiritual consciousness gushed out and the giant axe that had been stopped smashed at the back of Zhuan's head. Lu Guang held the glorious amethyst galaxy sword tightly to prevent Zhuan from escaping. Zhuan's eyes were indifferent. A golden light flashed out from between his eyebrows and quickly flew towards Lu Guang's forehead. At the same time, Zhuan summoned 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword. They turned into a terrifying vortex of killing intent and slammed into Lu Guang's chest. The speed of the soul-assimilating divine needle was too fast. Moreover, Zhuan and Lu Guang were so close to each other that Lu Guang was completely caught off guard. The soul-assimilating divine needle drilled into Lu Guang's spirit and began to wreak havoc within. Lu Guang screamed miserably. His spiritual soul was like an overturned river and was in a mess. At the same time, the 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword turned into a vortex of killing intent and slammed into Lu Guang's chest. Puchi. At this moment, Lu Guang's attention was focused on his sea of consciousness. How could he care about the vortex of killing intent that swept towards his chest? He was directly hit. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground. His sternum caved in and he looked extremely ferocious. At the same time, Lu Guang's giant axe also swung over. Zhuan stomped his right foot and summoned the other 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword, blocking in front of him. Bang! The powerful force forced Zhuan to retreat repeatedly. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Obviously, he had suffered some internal injuries. Lu Guang was an expert who had reached the peak of the void sky. Although this place was special, the power of the void sky could not be underestimated. Moreover, the giant axe stuck to the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryos and its power became stronger and stronger. In the end, it broke through the defense of the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryos and smashed into Zhuowen's body. Pucci. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and no longer held back. He immediately summoned the remaining 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword. The 36 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword transformed into a huge whirlpool of killing intent. It was extremely terrifying and swept up the giant axe. Zhuowen fell to the ground and spat out another mouthful of blood. His eyes were extremely cold as he stared at Lu Guang. This Lu Guang was not simple. Moreover, he was a genius disciple of the Devil Pearl sect. Since he had already offended him, he must be killed. When he thought up to here, Zhuowen stomped his right foot and the killing intent vortex formed from the 36 embryos of the no-beginning devil gold followed him like a shadow. On the other hand, Zhuowen's glorious amethyst galaxy was ready to attack at any moment. "You're dead." Lu Guang suddenly opened his eyes. He immediately took out a talisman and crushed it. Then, Lu Guang's injuries immediately recovered. His aura continued to rise and become more and more terrifying, like a giant beast that had been unsealed. He actually used the void explosion pill. This Lu Guang wants to kill this person. When Lu Guang's aura became more and more turbulent, many cultivators revealed a look of horror. The void explosion pill, as the name implied, was a medicinal pill that could stimulate the potential of a void sky realm cultivator for a short period of time, allowing the user to obtain more powerful strength. The side effects of this medicinal pill were very big. After using it, the user would inevitably be weak for 3 months. Moreover, it would have a bad effect on their foundation, which would affect their future cultivation. Unless they were desperate, very few void sky realm cultivators would use it. Moreover, the void explosion pill was very precious. Most of the people who could possess this kind of medicinal pill were cultivators from big forces. But now that Lu Guang had used it, it was obvious that he was forced into a desperate situation by Zhuowen. Lu Guang's eyes were red. He was forced to use the void explosion pill. Moreover, his divine soul was stirred up and painful. Fortunately, his divine soul was strong enough to pull out the soul-absorbing god needle in time. Killing style 18 axes. Lu Guang was like an angry tiger, rushing toward Zhuowen without any regard for his life. Zhuowen put away the soul-absorbing god needle. The killing intent whirlpool in front of him was not to be outdone. Bang, bang, bang. The two of them collided heavily. The surrounding space became unstable and began to shake violently. Lu Guang brandished the giant axe again and again, vividly displaying the killing style 18 axes. A terrifying killing intent lingered around Lu Guang's body like a bloody mist, suppressing Zhuowen in one fell swoop. So strong, Yun narrowed his eyes and looked at Lu Guang, who was crazily swinging the giant axe at him. His heart trembled. He didn't expect that Lu Guang, who used the void explosion pill, would become so terrifying. This strength was close to the strength of a void sky realm cultivator. "Xiao He, have you refined the other 12 embryos of the no-beginning devil gold sword?" Zhuowen quickly transmitted his voice. "Almost," Xiao He said in a deep voice. Zhuowen's heart sank. Lu Guang's attack was too crazy, forcing Zhuowen to continuously retreat. Boom. Suddenly, Lu Guang's attack became stronger. Then, the killing intent whirlpool in front of Zhuowen was shattered, and the 36 embryos of the no-beginning devil gold sword were scattered. Lu Guang's mouth was full of a sinister smile. His giant axe was like the wind, smashing toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He suddenly spread his torch dragon wings and immediately dodged the axe. "You can't escape." Lu Guang sneered and chased after Zhuowen with his giant axe. Zhuowen ignored him and flew up into the sky, reaching a height of 10,000 miles in an instant. Lu Guang didn't suspect anything and naturally followed closely behind. At this moment, everyone on the 10th floor was paying attention to the battle between Lu Guang and Zhuowen. Lu Guang was very famous on the 10th floor, and his strength was also in the upper echelons. Such a battle between experts naturally attracted the attention of many cultivators. Of course, they paid the most attention to Zhuan. After all, Zhuan was an unknown figure. Being able to force Lu Guang to such a state showed that he was extraordinary. After Mo Fan finished off the 3 cultivators, his gaze fell on the 2 people in the sky who were constantly chasing after each other. He followed without hesitation. "Kid, you want to go through the lightning disaster?" Xiao He suddenly asked. "I don't believe that Lu Guang can withstand 10 stacked lightning disasters." After reaching a height of 10,000 miles, Yuan stopped and completely released his aura. In an instant, terrifying lightning gates appeared in the sky, with Zhuan as the center. They formed a ring shape. Lu Guang had a sinister smile on his face. However, the moment he saw the 10 lightning gates that appeared around Zhuan, his smile froze. He couldn't help but exclaim, "10 lightning gates, you actually stacked lightning disasters 10 times to go through it. Are you courting death?" As he spoke, Lu Guang hurriedly retreated. Unfortunately, Zhuan spread his torch dragon wings and instantly flew to Lu Guang's side, bringing the 10 lightning gates with him. Chapter 2004. 10 Lightning Disasters, 10 Lightning Gates. Mo Fan stopped in midair and stared blankly at the ring-shaped lightning gates. His eyes were filled with shock. All the cultivators on the 10th floor were in an uproar. It was normal for a one-calamity true god to undergo a lightning disaster, but it was abnormal for a true god to undergo 10 lightning disasters at once. Since ancient times, no one had dared to accumulate 10 lightning disasters at once. This was because the might of 10 lightning calamities stacked on top of each other was truly too terrifying. Even a void sky expert might not necessarily be able to withstand it. Is this person crazy? Who would stack 10 lightning disasters at once to undergo a lightning disaster? No matter how terrifying a one-calamity true god is, he will be instantly killed by 10 lightning disasters. The uproar became more and more intense. Countless cultivators on the 10th floor were alarmed. Mo Fan sighed in his heart. He did not think that Zhuan would be able to survive this lightning disaster. Even he would not be able to withstand such a terrifying lightning disaster. Mo Fan rushed into the main hall. With a wave of his sleeve, he released the shackles on Yun Chuyu. Mo Fan knew that the reason Zhuan had rushed into the main hall so impulsively was probably because of this woman in front of him. When Mo Fan's gaze fell on Yun Chuyu's face, he was stunned. Yun Chuyu was indeed beautiful. "How is Brother Zhua?" Yun Chuyu immediately ran out of the main hall and looked around. Mo Fan sighed softly and pointed at the 10 lightning gates in the sky. "Brother Zhua is in the lightning gates." "What?" Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes stared at the 10 lightning gates. Her delicate body trembled. She also recognized that these were 10 lightning disasters. However, Yun Chuyu quickly regained her composure. She immediately found a place to sit cross-legged and waited silently. She recalled the scene of Zhuan helping her survive 6 lightning disasters. She also recalled Zhuan's heavenly thunder eye. She believed that Zhuan would not die in this lightning disaster. Time passed slowly. The lightning disaster in the sky lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Terrifying black lightning would occasionally escape from the 10 lightning gates, causing the other cultivators to be in a sorry state. This also caused the area where the lightning disaster was located to become extremely spacious. Rumble. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the 10 lightning gates in the sky. Then, a wretched figure fell from the sky to the ground. Bang! Everyone's gazes converged and discovered that the descending figure was actually Lu Guang. At this moment, Lu Guang's entire body was in tatters and charred black. His eyes were unfocused and his aura was weak. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Lu Guang was not far from death. 10 lightning calamities are indeed terrifying. Lu Guang is an existence who has reached the peak of the void sky realm, but he was actually beaten so badly by the lightning calamities. Everyone sighed one after another. They were extremely wary of the 10 lightning gates that had yet to disperse. Kacha! Suddenly, the 10 thunder gates shattered, and countless strands of lightning scattered, forming countless black lines in the sky, like a woman's messy hair fluttering in the wind. There, a tall figure slowly walked out from the lightning arcs. "There's someone else?" That guy didn't die? The lightning gate collapsed. Many cultivators looked up at the sky and saw a figure surrounded by terrifying lightning. They all fell into a daze. Brother Joa. Mo Fan looked at the figure in shock. Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes shone brightly. She believed that Zhuan would definitely be fine. Bang! Zhuan landed beside Lu Guang, who was motionless like a dead dog. Lu Guang seemed to have sensed something and raised his head with difficulty. He looked at Zhuowen's indifferent eyes and said bitterly, "The Devil Pearl sect will not let you go. Senior brother Wei Shuo will not let you go either." "Oh, are you done with your nonsense? Since you're done, you can go on your way." As Zhuan spoke, the glorious amethyst galaxy sword turned into a purple light and pierced into Lu Guang's glabella, completely destroying his divine soul. Lu Guang was very unwilling. If it were not for the lightning calamity, he would definitely be able to kill this person. Moreover, what made Lu Guang even more incredulous was that this person did not feel any pressure at all when passing the lightning calamity. This was because the heavenly thunder eye between this person's glabella could completely suppress the lightning of the lightning calamity. "I'm already a true god of two calamities." Zhuan felt that the energy in his body had increased, and he was quite happy. After advancing to a true god of two calamities, he finally knew how big the gap between a true god of two calamities and a true god of one calamity was. After killing Lu Guang, Zhuan put away Lu Guang's spirit ring and casually checked it. His eyes immediately lit up with passion. Lu Guang's spirit ring contained many materials, divine stones, and divine herbs. Most importantly, there were more than 50 disaster crystal cores in Lu Guang's spirit ring. Each disaster crystal core was comparable to the crystal core in Gallo's body that Zhuan had obtained previously. Moreover, some of them were of a higher quality. With so many disaster crystal cores, it was enough to raise the cultivation level of Zhuowen's original body to a true god of three calamities. The disaster crystal cores were not very useful to void sky cultivators, but to true gods, they were simply cheating devices that could quickly raise their cultivation level. The disaster crystal cores were definitely an unimaginable fortune. Looks like Lu Guang is the same as Mo Fan. They both teleported back from the 10th level and above. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to have so many disaster crystal cores, Zhuan thought to himself. Zhuan knew very well that there were very few mutated beasts in the 10th level and above. Zhuan had already noticed this when he was passing through. In addition to what Mo Fan had said about the situation above the 10th level, Lu Guang's disaster crystal cores could only have been obtained from trial grounds above the 10th level. Brother Joa, you're really amazing. You even passed through 10 stacked lightning calamities. I admire you. Mo Fan gave him a thumbs up. Many of the surrounding cultivators looked at Zhuowen with fear in their eyes. Most of the people present were void sky cultivators, so Zhuowen's true god of two calamities was not conspicuous in front of them. However, Zhuan was able to kill Lu Guang, an expert who had reached the peak of void sky. It was obvious that this person was not simple. Of course, in the hearts of many cultivators, this person was able to kill a void sky cultivator mainly because he had the advantage of time, place, and people. In the outside world, they did not think that Zhuowen had the ability to kill a void sky cultivator. Big brother Zhuo, are you alright? Zhuan waved his hand and immediately introduced him to Yun Chuyu. Chuyu, this is brother Mo Fan, the eldest disciple of Heavenly Devil Island. Brother Mo, this is my friend. Her name is Yun Chuyu. Mo Fan hurriedly said, Greetings, junior sister Yun. Yun Chuyu bowed slightly and her eyes dimmed slightly. Obviously, she was not particularly satisfied with the way Zhuowen had addressed her. Chuyu, take these 20 disaster crystal cores first. We still have a long time here. If you want to strengthen yourself, you must have these things. Zhuowen took out 20 disaster crystal cores and said with a smile. Yun Chuyu took the disaster crystal cores with a sweet smile on her face and softly acknowledged. Brother Mo, I'm going to enter the 11th floor. I'll leave Chuyu in your care. I hope that the previous incident will not happen again, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Mo Fan solemnly said, Brother Zhuo, don't worry. With me here, I won't let junior sister Yun suffer. Zhuan nodded and entered the main hall. He smashed the restriction on the door with a punch and stepped into the 11th floor. The golden ripples on the 11th floor's corridor were so dense that even Zhuan was surprised. Zhuan had been in the corridor for half a month. He had actually relied on the golden ripples to cultivate the celestial star meditation diagram to minor accomplishment. The starry sky of his spiritual space had finally given birth to a huge galaxy. This celestial star meditation diagram is extraordinary. The divine sense tempered by it is actually many times stronger than the divine sense cultivated by ordinary cultivation methods. Yuan stood up, his eyes flashing. He began to suspect that this celestial star meditation diagram was not a simple void heaven cultivation method. Moreover, Zhuan knew that the 5 void heaven cultivation methods placed on the top floor of the scripture pavilion were specially arranged by Tai Ching. Zhuan was quite grateful to Tai Ching for obtaining such a powerful cultivation method. At least Tai Ching kept his promise. The moment he entered the 11th floor, Zhuan felt as if he had entered an ancient battlefield. This land was filled with smoke, broken walls, and mountains of corpses. Mo Fan said that above the 10th floor, there are dangers everywhere. If I want to rush to the next floor, I must have the courage to risk my life. Zhuan's eyes flashed as he slowly walked around this battlefield. Suddenly, a low beastly roar came from under his feet. Immediately, the soil under Zhuan's feet cracked open, and a black shadow drilled out. Zhuan took out the 36 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword and formed a vortex of killing intent around him. Bang! The black shadow was instantly penetrated by the vortex of killing intent. With a wail, it crashed heavily into the ground not far away. Only then did Zhuan notice that the shadow's true appearance was that of a pangolin with a blade on its back. At this moment, the pangolin's body was penetrated by the vortex of killing intent. Blood splattered everywhere as it lost all signs of life. Zhuan came to the side of the pangolin and used the glorious purple galaxy divine sword to cut open the pangolin's belly and took out the calamity crystal nucleus. Roar, roar, roar. After Zhuan removed the calamity crystal core of the pangolin, a series of roars came from underground. The roars were filled with mournful meaning. Boom, boom. Then, with Zhuan as the center, the land within a radius of 100 li began to rise and fall like terrifying waves. Whoosh, whoosh. Black shadows emerged from below and instantly filled the space where Zhuan was. They were so dense that they were like dark clouds, blocking his vision. That newcomer is finished. He didn't even know the rules of the 11th floor and killed a bladed beast. These are exotic beasts that live in groups. Once one of them is killed, it will attract an endless amount of bladed beasts. On a high slope 1,000 meters away from Zhuan, 2 women watched this scene quietly and shook their heads. Originally, they planned to stop Zhuan. Unfortunately, Zhuan's actions were too fast. Before they could warn him, he had already killed the bladed beast. Now, they naturally didn't dare to make a sound. Once they did, they would attract the attention of the bladed beast horde. At that time, the 2 of them would suffer a calamity. Suddenly, the younger woman exclaimed, "Big Sister Exen, look." That newcomer doesn't seem to be affected at all. The mature and charming Big Sister Exion's beautiful eyes fell on the bladed beast horde and she was stunned. In the middle of the beast horde, the newcomer was surrounded by black gold swords. These small black gold swords transformed into terrifying whirlpools of killing intent. Wherever they passed, the piercing beasts fell like rain. Is this guy really a newcomer? He's already so strong after just entering the 11th floor? Big Sister Exen was shocked. Chapter 2005. Tower of Babel. Zhuan expressionlessly looked at the scattered bladed beasts, then slowly took out the calamity crystal cores from the corpses of the surrounding bladed beasts. Big Sister Exen, should we go up? There are so many bladed beasts, how many calamity crystal cores are there? The younger woman's eyes lit up. The charming woman called Big Sister X and shook her head and said, "Little Bai, let's not act rashly. This newcomer is too strong. If we are discovered, I'm afraid it will be difficult to end well. Let's retreat." After saying that, The charming woman quietly retreated with little Bai. You two have been here for a long time. Are you planning to leave just like that? Aren't you going to tell me about the situation here? An indifferent voice sounded, causing the two women to tremble. Then, Big Sister Exen immediately pulled out her long blade and slashed behind her. The black-clothed Zhuoan reached out with his right hand and caught the long blade. Then, with a pinch, he threw it to the side. The two women in front of him weren't very strong. Even on the 10th floor, they were considered ordinary. This kind of attack was really insignificant to Zhuoan. Big Sister Xian's beautiful face turned pale, while Little Bai hid behind her, not daring to come out. Don't be so afraid. You saw it too. There are too many mutant beast corpses. I can't handle it alone. Help me take out the Calamity Crystal cores. After saying that, Yuan slowly walked past Big Sister Exen. Big Sister Exen was stunned on the spot, hesitating. Big Sister Exen, this person wants us to help him get the Calamity Crystal cores. We? Little Bai quietly asked. Big Sister Exen frowned and said, Follow him. The two women followed behind Zhuoan and silently collected the Calamity Crystal cores. During this time, the three of them were silent. 3 hours later, the three of them finally finished collecting all the Calamity Crystal cores. Zhuoan counted and found that he had collected 500 Calamity Crystal cores. However, the quality of these Calamity Crystal cores was much worse than the Calamity Crystal cores he obtained from Lu Guang's spirit ring. This should be related to the mutant beast's strength. After all, the bladed beasts weren't very strong. They relied on their numbers to attack their enemies. Big Sister Exen and Little Bai obediently handed over the Calamity Crystal nucleus to Zhuoan, not daring to take it for themselves. Zhuoan took the storage bag and immediately took out 40 disaster crystal cores from it and handed them to the two women, saying, Take these as a reward for helping me collect the disaster crystal cores. The two women obviously didn't expect that Zhuoan would give them a reward and were at a loss for a while. After receiving it, the two women's beautiful eyes lit up with joy, and they hurriedly thanked Zhuoan. Are you also participating in the Grand Interstellar Tournament? Zhuoan asked. During this period of time, Zhuoan also learned the names of the two women. The charming woman was called Chu Exen, and the younger one was called Bai Chui. The two women shook their heads. Chu Xian said, We're loose cultivators from Zhongyu. We came here to seek opportunities and increase our strength. However, we're not strong enough, so we're stuck at the 11th level. You should be a newcomer participating in the Grand Interstellar Tournament, right? It's the first time I've seen a newcomer as strong as you. Not only did you not fear the bladed beasts, but you also killed them all. Zhuoan nodded and said in a deep voice, Then, do you two know where to go to the 12th level? Chu Xian said, Naturally. Big brother Zhuo, come with us. I'll take you there. After saying that, the group of three disappeared on the spot. The 11th level was indeed much more dangerous than the 10th level. Along the way, Zhuoan encountered too many strange beasts. However, Zhuoan relied on his powerful divine sense to avoid most of them. Those that couldn't avoid Zhuoan were killed by him. After Zhuoan's soul transformed into a nebula, his divine sense became even more powerful. The range of his divine sense in this place reached 5,000 meters, which was definitely a terrifying number. Chu Xian and Bai Chui were shocked by Zhuoan's strength and powerful divine sense along the way. If it weren't for Zhuoan, the two of them might not have been able to avoid danger. Soon, the three of them stopped at a huge basin. In the middle of the basin, there was a huge black tower that reached the sky. Zhuoan's divine sense had a range of 5,000 meters, but his divine sense couldn't find the end of the black tower. Many cultivators were gathered at the bottom of the basin. Zhuoan even saw a crude market there. Many cultivators were haggling over prices in the market. This is the heaven-reaching tower. It only appears on the 11th level because this tower directly leads to the 18th level. As long as your divine sense is strong enough, you can go through this heaven-reaching tower and directly reach the 18th level, Chu Xian explained. The 18th level? Someone went through this heaven-reaching tower and directly reached the 18th level? Zhuoan said in surprise. Chu Xian shook her head and said, No, but some time ago, A genius climbed from the 11th level and directly reached the 17th level. This shocked all the cultivators in the vicinity of the heaven-reaching tower. This person is said to be Tong Chimei, the genius of the Northern Yu Half-Moon Hall. She is very young and definitely hasn't cultivated for more than 1,000 years. But to be able to reach the 17th level in one go, even I admire her from the bottom of my heart. One was also shocked by Tong Chimei's strength. The trial ground had an age limit. Once one was over 3,000 years old, they weren't allowed to enter. Therefore, those who could enter the trial ground were mostly young, unlike those old fellows who had cultivated for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. This also made it difficult for these young cultivators to reach the higher levels of the trial ground. But there were also monstrous geniuses among them, and Tong Chimei was one of them. Zhuowen's divine sense was indeed stronger than most of the cultivators in the trial ground, but if he had to pass through this heaven-reaching tower and reach the 17th level in one go, he wouldn't be able to do it. Let's go in and take a look, Zhuowen said. Chu Xian was a little embarrassed. She shook her head and said, Big brother Zhuo, you should go in. Little Bai and I can't go in yet. Zhuowen was startled and said, What's wrong? Chu Xian shook her head and said, You don't have to worry about this. You go in first. As long as you pay a certain amount of calamity crystal nuclei, you can enter the heaven-reaching tower. As long as you can pass through the heaven-reaching tower and enter the next level, you will have the opportunity to cultivate on that level until you feel that you have the strength to attack the next level. Then you can continue to move forward. However, Big Brother Zhuo, you have to be careful of Xueli in the heaven-reaching tower. That Xueli likes to use his strength to bully the weak. Generally, Xueli will make things difficult for cultivators below the Void Sky realm. You'd better go in and show your strength. Although Chu Xian's behavior was a little strange, Zhuowen could only nod his head. After bidding farewell to the two women, he entered the basin. Big Sister Xian, this newcomer is very strong. Why don't you ask him for help? I think if it's Big Brother Zhuo, he should be able to help you, Bai Chui said in a deep voice. Chu Xian shook her head and said, Xueli is very strong. Moreover, Big Brother Zhuo and we just met. I can't ask him to help us deal with Xueli. Bai Chui nodded slightly and said, Then let's leave this basin. Otherwise, if we are discovered by Xueli, it would be terrible. Zhuowen looked at Chu Xian and Bai Chui disappearing outside the basin and narrowed his eyes. With his powerful divine sense, he naturally heard the conversation between the two women. Passing through the basin, Zhuowen looked around at the market square and found that the market square here was quite lively. Moreover, the market square here also used calamity crystal nuclei as the currency. Zhuowen didn't pay much attention to the market square here. Instead, he went straight to the bottom of the heaven-reaching tower. There weren't many cultivators coming and going in the heaven-reaching tower, which made Zhuowen feel very strange. Moreover, Zhuowen also found that when he came to the door, many cultivators passing by looked surprised and strange, even mixed with a trace of pity. A newcomer? Want to enter the heaven-reaching tower? A cultivator lazily leaned against the door and spread out his hand to Zhuowen and said, The price of the heaven-reaching tower was originally 100 calamity crystal nuclei. You are a newcomer, so you have to increase it by 10 times. Hand it over. You're dead. If you don't take out 10,000 calamity crystal nuclei now, you'll be a dead man in the next moment. The cultivator's words had just fallen when an even more lazy voice came. What's that? The cultivator's eyes fell on the thunderfire sword floating beside Zhuowen. On the hilt of the sword sat Xiao He lazily. Slap your mouth. Impudent, you actually dare to say what this dragon master is? Xiao He said shamelessly. Zhuowen smiled in his heart. He stretched out his right hand and slapped the cultivator's face, knocking him to the ground. 1,000 calamity crystal nuclei, Zhuowen couldn't take out even now. This was clearly a scam. Since Little Black had taken the initiative to come out, it was obvious that Little Black wanted to help him vent his anger. Therefore, Zhuowen followed Little Black's instructions. Ouch, you dare to hit me? You're dead, you're finished. The cultivator covered his face and immediately took out his divine tool to attack Zhuowen. Ouch, you can't even hand over 10,000 calamity crystal nuclei. Today, this Dragon Master will teach you how to be a proper person. Xiao He sneered and immediately summoned the extreme fire sword. In an instant, it stood on the cultivator's divine tool and actually sent him flying. Then, the thunder fire sword pierced the cultivator's forehead and destroyed his divine soul. Plop! The cultivator fell to the ground, completely dead. The surrounding people collectively quieted down and looked at the man and the sword at the door in disbelief. Zhuan's eyes gradually turned cold. Chu Exen was right. This Xueli and his subordinates were people who used their strength to bully the weak. At the same time, they occupied Tong Tian Tower to steal the calamity crystal nuclei from other people's hands. Zhuan was most unhappy with this kind of people. Before entering Tong Tian Tower, it seemed that he had to clean up the interior of Tong Tian Tower. Bang, bang, bang. When Zhuan and Xiao He entered the bottom of Tong Tian Tower, waves of miserable screams came from inside. The cultivators outside looked on in fear, but no one dared to enter. Xueli was a powerhouse who had ascended the void sky. Moreover, his divine sense had reached more than 2,000 meters, which was enough to dominate the 11th floor. Moreover, Xueli was very good at handling people. When he met powerful cultivators, he would be respectful like a grandson. As for those cultivators with trashy strength, he would usually treat them as trash. As the saying goes, if there's a master, there must be a dog. Since the master was like this, Xueli's subordinates were naturally not much better. However, many cultivators on the 11th floor were angry with Xueli but didn't dare to say anything. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.